Good evening and welcome to the Jinn and Tonic Show. On this Friday, the 24th of November, welcome to Stops. I'm sure Abu will be joining us shortly. Welcome, Stops. How have you been keeping, my good sir?
Hi, well, thank you very much. I was totally in Europe, and it was a summer's day a couple of days ago. I was very surprised.
Yes, I mean, it's been a couple of mild days out here. And even when I was in Speaker's Corner this past Sunday, it wasn't super cold. I mean, it got chilly in the evening, obviously. But it was interesting to be back after like a 3-month layoff because of the distance I'm now away from London. As I say, got some footage, so a number of the videos up on the channel, sort of smaller stuff. And then the ones with full where I got a lot more, I'm battling to get those up because I've got such a slow upload connection, 1 megabit per second. So I have to run it overnight, and it's failed when I've done it recently. So now I'm plugged in, and overnight this weekend I'm going to upload those videos. And of course there's versions of those that are on the Muslim channels, and not the full version. I'll have a full even before you started with the other two guys. So that should be interesting.
It's a pity yours broke off. All of I couldn't follow. It just stopped, and then I had to find it again and blah blah blah. So it was.
What do you mean?
A pain in the arse. The live stream.
Yes, the live stream kept dropping. I'm not going to do live stream that like that again. I mean, I'm connecting to my phone, which is on a battery, because the phone battery gets used up so quickly in live stream. So I had my GoPro Hero outputting to the phone. Now, some people will go, well, why don't you just use your phone? You could, but the phone's field of view, how wide the phone is, very narrow. So you've got to keep shifting the phone around. I may do that in future, but going through there, because I had to have it on a separate battery to take an input into the phone. It's all a bit techie, but the Android phones allow you to actually have an input into the phone so you can connect better quality cameras. The downside is if you try and live stream without doing that, you can't record the footage. So if you look at those live streams, the footage that's been recorded is very poor. And so I can't really use those. So the advantage of having a different camera is to record in the camera and to record the live stream. And then I put the better versions on when I've done the edit afterwards. So that was my reasoning. But I kept pressing buttons and it kept disconnecting. And so that's why I had like multiple versions of that live stream. I would have liked to live stream for 3 or 4 hours, but A, I don't think that the phone would have lasted that long, even with a separate battery. And B, I just had to press buttons. I can see some of the comments coming up, but it's just finicky to hold and to do all of that sort of stuff. So.
Right, because I was biting my keyboard trying to get a message with you, thinking if I could only communicate with you and tell you, okay, ask him this, like what I did with Ike.
Yes, yes. I mean, you and I can make, whenever I go again, which will be probably next year now, I'm guessing, what we could do is like a Skype feed, and I'll have something in my ear, and then you can be able to hear me live, because obviously there's a delay with live stream. So then you'd be sort of behind the conversation. So if we did it something like that. By the way, I was speaking to somebody on Skype just like 10 minutes ago. He's going, let's see if we can get Stops out to London. I said, well, if we could, because obviously, you'd need to be kind of sponsored unless you were coming out this way. And then I would definitely make sure I came up to London, we stay in an Airbnb or something. We could have a fascinating afternoon in Speaker's Corner if you made the trip over here at some point. And welcome to Abu as well, joining us.
Hello.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yeah, or we could have Abu over as well. Imagine having Abu and Stops over in Speaker's Corner, and Abu just goes into Arabic and he just blows them all away with Arabic. And
we have a field day.
Boom, 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 boom.
Somebody just said, and this is true, we haven't even started and it's already 2 dislikes.
There we go. Well, that's not unusual, is it? Yeah, they dislike conversation. Oh, I have got some beauties of crazy comments for tonight. That's going to take us a little while, I'm sure. If you're watching this and you haven't seen it, I'm at the moment recommending Dawa channels, because I haven't uploaded the full discussion with Phil, who discussed something with Imran, who seemed a reasonable sort of guy to have that conversation. I think he's...
Excuse me? I've done him.
Yeah,
he had an EF Dawa. This is a vile, sick creature, let me tell you. If he goes into slavery, he thinks this is all good. I mean, if you hear his views, it's a pity. Well, my video got deleted. This guy is a sicko.
Oh, okay. I haven't obviously listened to that, but I mean, just the discussion with Phil, he seemed reasonable, and that discussion was going okay until other people butted in there. So, but that I've got the full version of that in better audio and so forth. But as I say, it just takes time to upload. So at the moment, if you want to watch that, do go and watch it and look at the comments. And I'm going to start with that because I just feel like I need to add this in. I talk about this a lot, and so I'm going to add this in now. And And this is a perfect example of what's going on here. So for those who don't know, I often mention the Dunning-Kruger effect. In the field of psychology, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias wherein people of low ability suffer from illusionary superiority, mistakenly assessing their cognitive ability as greater than it is. The cognitive bias of illusory superiority derives from their metacognitive inability of low ability persons to recognize their own ineptitude. Okay, just fancy words for saying people just don't know what they don't know, and therefore, because they're so ignorant, they don't know the wider, not a field of knowledge that's out there, and therefore, they're like ignorantly confident in a sense.
You have perfect examples. You have Hamza Tsources on embryology, and you have Subur on evolution.
Yes, and of course the full conversation with towards the end with there, certainly with Darren anyway, and even to some degree with Imram, was another perfect example. But if you go and read the comments, that's why I wanted to put this in. I'll just finish this off. Without the self-awareness of metacognition, low ability people cannot objectively evaluate their actual competence or incompetence. So
there's another dimension to this, and that is that we kind of subconsciously trust people who appear to be very certain of themselves.
Correct. Yes.
So the sad thing is that scientists, especially scientists with high cognitive abilities, that is most usually physicists and mathematicians, will appear to be less certain when they actually are more certain, but because they are so aware of themselves.
Yes, I mean, they know so much as well, and Phil doesn't, and I'm not claiming he's like a world expert, but he's certainly an expert compared to everybody else in Speaker's Corner by, a country mile. So that's when I say expert, I'm referring to him as an expert in terms of everybody else that's at Speaker's Corner. Obviously, but he interacts, and I've seen the papers. So people go, oh, what is his PhD? So he did study a degree in astrobiology, astronomy, sorry, some years back. But he reads all the papers as if you go to his channel, you can see all the videos there. In fact, I've got his channel bookmarked here, and I'm going to put it in for those people who are interested, because he's done all of them. I partly helped, and in fact, I was just doing an edit on one of the last videos. So people who are interested, go and look at Phil's channel there. There's plenty to do there. I'll pop it in here for you guys as well. Obviously, you know it. But because he knows so much more about it, he's much more careful about throwing out sort of any sort of definitive answer. And of course, if you go read the comments on these things, the credulous people, or the people with low abilities and aptitudes in this sort of thing, see that as a weakness. It's like, it's a paradox, really.
It's not only them, it's also the audience.
Correct.
So
Rob, did you see this comment just now from the audience? Exactly. The Dunning-Kruger effect should be renamed Speaker's Corner syndrome.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Kane, great comment. It should. Absolutely right. But of course, because they've been programmed or infected with the idea that certainty is what is required, when of course that's extremely difficult to come by anyway, even a cursory look into not psychology, philosophy will reveal that. They mistakenly think that that's what one is looking for, and of course that's what they require or seem to require without thinking. But again, the odd, more smart people, and they tend to be more Christians, they don't go along that route, and you never hear the philosophers go along that route. And even the definitions for knowledge doesn't include certainty or absolutism. So but
I can give another example. You don't even have to go to religious people. Watch a kind of political debate between kind of the different parties in a specific country. We can take Germany, for example, and watch how certain every politician appears to be. They all want to project this aura of they are so certain.
There's no government anymore.
Yeah. Okay, the state in Germany is now a bit problematic, but in general, go watch
Italy now.
Yeah, or the primaries in the United States, for example. And then watch switch between that and a kind of debate between physicists, where they kind of debate, for example, what interpretation of quantum mechanics is correct. Yes, and you will see that despite that, or not, maybe that's not even a better. Maybe the better examples, like things that we are more certain about. So, like in politics, despite that, I think Lawrence Krauss that now is starting to see a lot of kind of weird things here. But he said something that was good, I think. It's that the reason why I choose physics is because physics is easy. And I think he related it to biology and said biology is way too messy. In physics, we can make very exact predictions and we can calculate everything with very exact mathematics. But in biology, it's too messy. Okay, compare biology to politics. Politics is way more messy than biology. Yes, biology is messy. It's a very tiny, like, it's a very small level. But is it really plausible that politicians can be so certain about the things that they appear to be so certain about? Because I think it's extremely hard to know all the variables.
No, of course not. I mean, what they're doing is trying to show certainty to get elected. So it's a psychological ploy, as you mentioned earlier. Oftentimes, people who are ignorant, and that includes all of us in different fields, we tend to listen to people. It's just, maybe it's part of our, evolutionary psychology or whatever the case is. We tend to listen to people who sound certain. The more certain, the better you appear to communicate, the more people seem to be drawn to that, even if you're talking complete nonsense. And that, this has been tested, as you say, many times over, and people are influenced by that. Some of us care more about the facts. But unfortunately, that's increasingly rare, seemingly, in a number of domains. So it's people's feelings or their gut instinct or, quote, their intuition. And again, it was beautiful on the video. Really explained why you should not be using your intuition with general relativity or quantum mechanics, because it's counterintuitive. And so, this was explained, but this bypassed virtually every commenter that I saw on that. So, that's the sort of thing that, so you're dealing with, oftentimes with people that are looking for certainty. And if people sound certain, they're liable to go with that without checking, because obviously looking up things is time consuming and so on. But you would think if, your worldview revolved around it, or your arguments or whatever the case is, you'd take more time to look into these things. So I often say it's like some religious people must have a civil war going on in their head. They're somehow able to quiet the civil war down, but there's a civil war between, I have to have everything confirm my beliefs, and oops, I'm now running into facts that disconfirm it. What do I do? How do I get around that? And so, of course, what I'm seeing a lot of is, hey, well, it's not absolutely certain. Therefore, in their mind, there's a backdoor to escape. And I'm sure we'll cover more of that, as we always do. So, shall we get onto the comments? Because I have got plenty here. This is going to be interesting.
Crazy comments is also another domain.
Crazy comments are going to be plenty here. So,
but sometimes you see this phenomena in crazy comments that you're talking
all the time.
about.
All the time. Yeah.
Like, they have a civil war inside their head and they're trying to find escape routes.
Yes, it's all emotional. It's a comment of how I feel in the moment. I've got no evidence. I can't substantiate my comment, but this is what feels right. And this is what I've been programmed or told to believe. And so, that's what I'm going to do. Just excuse me one moment.
Okay, everybody, put your drinks down. I don't want you to take another sip, because you're going to spread it all over the keyboard once you read all these things, okay?
Right. Let's start with the ones that Stop sent me. Mashallah, Masha, Allah. Okay, that's
Allah.
Yeah, isn't it normally put together as one? Sometimes I see people putting that word together. Sometimes
it means ma is what, sha wanted, Allah God. So what God wanted.
What God wanted. Okay, right.
Yeah, but writing it, you see often, I mean, Rob is right. You see this as mashallah as one word.
Or there's like an apostrophe in there. So
yeah, the thing is that in Arabic, you don't have really a separation between, like when you say masha'a law, you don't pronounce Allah, you pronounce it directly. You see what I'm saying? So it becomes masha'Allah directly.
Right, I'm going to apologize up front. I've got a bit of a cough, so every now and again I might just suddenly mute myself so I don't blast people's ears and have it recorded. So I do apologize in advance. I've got this like creeping cough here that pops up every now and again. Anyway, let's get going. MashaAllah, Sheikh Muhammad hijab. That's interesting. I didn't know it was a sheikh. May Allah protect our teacher and preserve his knowledge, and may Allah keep all of us on the straight path and protect us from the evil eye. What on earth is the evil eye?
evil eye is this thing, like say that someone is envious of someone. Say that you're reading Quran and you're reading it so beautiful, and then someone sees you and hears you and he becomes envious. Then he sends out the evil eye and he kind of creates almost like magic for you. So maybe you will become sick in
It's
the
a
throat or something.
superstitious, nonsensical curse.
Yeah. Or if you have a very beautiful face, someone sent out an evil eye, and then an accident will happen, so you become deformed.
Right, but who sends that? The jinns or
No,
Satan or Allah?
it's kind of psychological. I don't know exactly the mechanisms of it, but it's like they look at him and then the evil eye is sent out, and it's kind of magical.
Right, okay. Alrighty then. So moving on from the evil eye, let's bring up this one a bit bigger. You sound like a gay guy who is upset because don't like puss. Now, I guess this is directed towards you, Stops. And
Correct.
A link to a video. I'm not sure what that link is. You can inform us in a moment. This video is crap, and you, Irish infidel, won't last long. Come to Hyde Park. Then talk like a man. So stop playing bitch online. So what was the video? What was this in relation to?
Oh, I don't remember.
Okay.
I put. Did you copy the name? Because I put into the name where it comes from.
In your so me think before you speak video. Does that make sense to you? That's what you've called it here. Crazy comment too.
Should be my.
There we go. I'm sounding like them, like them. My think before you speak video. I'm getting hypnotized there.
I made a video reply, a comment to a video which was called "Think Before Whatever," something about atheists. On this reply, this in-your-face guy or girl or whatever made hundreds of comments, and this is just a sample of those. And by the way, if somebody puts a video link, I will take them out of spam, but I will never look at them because it's stupid. If somebody wants me to look at a video, they need to tell me what this is about and what the consequences are if I watch this. So I'm not going to go and watch just any random video.
Yeah, fair enough. That sounds good. Welcoming the Raven, previous panelist who hasn't been with us for a while, who happened to be chatting to me on Skype. Welcome, Raven. We're just going through crazy comments at the moment, which will take up a little bit of the show. We've got plenty of them.
And what is quite weird is I get this a lot, really a lot, where people are saying, if you don't come to Speaker's Corner, you're not a man. Like, I always ask them, what is the difference between making my comment 6,000 kilometers away and making my comment in Speaker's Corner or in Hyde Park or in Central Park or in the Sahara Desert? The points are the same. What difference is it whether I'm doing it in Speaker's Corner or not?
I think for them, this seems to be, and of course it's exactly the opposite, like the intellectual battleground. If you're not in Speaker's Corner, well, then, you're not where. And of course, the smartest people in the world are just exactly not in Speaker's Corner. So you're not going to get the best arguments, the smartest people in Speaker's Corner. And I'm quite happy to lump myself with everybody else. It's virtually everybody is ignorant. Now you get somebody like Phil who comes there, who's less ignorant and more knowledgeable in a particular field. And of course, they all see this as a weakness, which is just completely ironic. But yeah, if you don't come there, because for them, and TDS Dave said this beautifully, and I don't know if I've got the comment or whether I'll be able to paraphrase it, but he's basically said in one of his comments, and I thought that was brilliant. It's like a intellectual football match, and they will keep cheering their side or gushing their side, no matter whether the side wins or loses. They will just keep saying that. So for them, this is like a sports game with intellectual. They don't care about truth. They care more about how does the conversation go? Does my man seem like he's getting on top of the situation? And tactics is an easy way to do that. If you find a few tactics, speak in a certain way, avoid answering questions, whatever the case is, then you sound like, to the ear that doesn't care about truth, like, you're in control and you've won the debate. And that's what I think most of them are looking at. They don't care about really what's being said. They're never going to look it up themselves anyway. So if you don't come down to Speaker's Corner, then you're not in the boxing ring. It doesn't matter that you're the expert, from, talking from the side of the ring that often knows more than most anybody else. That doesn't bother them, seemingly. So
yeah, it must be something like that.
Sorry, I just had a bit of a cough there. Right. Let's bring this one up a bit bigger. Another one in your face. The mass adoption of teaching Darwinism does not make it right. You can't prove it, nor can you put it under a microscope. You have millions spent on it because the Satan-worshipping cults, Illuminati, are funding your blasphemous ideology so that you can stay away from truth. This Illuminati is everywhere, and the one-eyed billy goat symbol is everywhere too. So yeah, that's the agenda, to keep intellectual ones at bay by B-U-Y, throwing bananas at them and keeping them swinging from tree to tree. Oh, well, there we go. Another conspiracy theorist.
I would love to dissect that brain. I would love to have a chat with this person just for 10 minutes just to see what goes on in there.
I think you find it be a painful attempt at a conversation by the look of it.
I love the way they write a comment and they give themselves a thumb up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thumbs up my own comment. Beautiful. Yes, beautiful. Well, that was a bit too fast. Hello. Why am I going so fast? This was a nice short comment. So atheists are a bunch of apes. No surprise. Oh, there we go. Well, not quite accurate. We are descendants, of a common ancestor, of which apes are a branch. So he's half right. Just,
No, we're a type of ape. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is quite interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Saburo, right? This is his baby, his Darwinian delusions, where he brings up the most inane things. And I never realized this. The category is comedy.
That's a good point. Yes. Now, in his mind, is Darwinian evolution comedy, or is what he's saying comedy? And I think we are likely to say...
He sees the irony in that.
No, I think we'd likely see what he's saying as comedy, whereas he's thinking that Darwinian evolution is comedy. So, yes, you're right. The irony is not lost there. Well, it may be lost on him, but it's not lost on us. So, yes, much of what he says is comedy. And you might have seen the video, just speaking of it, of that old guy that I put on my channel there that was sort of heckling me. Oh, Rob is here, because obviously they thought I'd disappeared. Again, Muslims just make up their own stuff, as we all know. But because I haven't been down for 3 months, they thought, oh, Sabur scared me away, which of course I came back 2 weeks later after I'd done some work. So I work some weekends, not all of them. And so obviously I came back for a while, and then I've obviously moved away. So, without thinking, and of course making up their own stuff. Rob, so when I came, this old fellow, which I'd spoken to before, he's got a couple of videos on my channel. He can't speak proper English. I mean, English is not his first language, so I'm not deriding him for that. But he's not the smartest tool in the toolbox anyway. And he felt the first time we had an interaction, he came off looking silly. So I let him have that monologue, which is on my channel there. I just wanted to get it over. So I let him speak for like 20 minutes or whatever. And again, silly me, against my better judgment, I thought, no, I don't think this is going to be of any value. But the poor guy, and my sympathy got the better of me, and I let him do it. So now, of course, if you listen to him there, I'm a terrible guy, blah, blah, blah. And he's going to call Sabur and all this sort of stuff. So again, all comedy gold, really. Cool. Oh, and this one here is an interesting one. And I only brought this up because I screenshotted this. And while it's not a crazy comment, it's a fascinating title. This is the title: "Don't Know of the Gaps." Skydive Phil, Imran, and Hamza. When Phil says we don't know, i.e., summarizing what cosmologists believe about origins of the universe, they equate this to God of the Gaps, which of course is just incredibly ironic. So I thought I'd take a screenshot of that and share that as well. But interesting enough, the title underneath this is more sort of reasonable. But I just thought the title, the description was sort of more reasonable. But the title I thought was just ironic, to say the least. Everybody that I when I read the comments, virtually everybody was like, "Oh," and I'm going to bring it up now just to show you. What I got from this is we don't know, and I'm going, did you actually watch it, or is your ears tuned to hear what you want to hear, which of course is what I admonished Hamza for doing, and misrepresenting Phil multiple times in this video, to the point where Phil had to say, stop putting words in my mouth. And then I came in and admonished him there, which I thought seemed to help a little bit. Who knows?
But I recommend everybody watch this, because this is really funny. It is really hilarious the way that Skydive Phil makes so much sense. He very carefully leads them point by point by point, and then goes on to the next point, and then to the next point, and they are nodding and saying, oh, yeah. So he thinks he's safe to go to the next point, and all of a sudden I see Hamza's eyes go doing, and he's gone. He can't handle this. It's too much for his little brain. And then he asks a question, and Phil is like, huh? Excuse me, I have literally just explained it a few seconds ago, and now you're asking a totally nonsensical question regarding this? And he was like, what? And then he turned to, what's his name, Imran or something, and said, well, you got it, didn't you? And he was like nodding, yeah, I got it. I don't know whether he did, but he was so disgusted with Hamza, Darren Hamza, that is. This was amazing.
Yeah, but you can see the approach there as well. It's to try and misrepresent your position and get you to answer a certain way so he can respond. He's not listening to educate himself or to understand your position. He's listening to argue, and to argue not honestly, to argue, to misrepresent your position. I mean, how many times? 3, 4, 5 times, to the point where Phil says, stop putting words in my mouth. And that's when I shouted out at some point, give or take thereabouts, you hear what you want to hear.
Exactly.
He's the expert, stop interrupting and blah, blah, blah. Because it just
he's trying to coax words, like one single word, and I can hear that he's digging for this word, and he's trying to get Phil to say this one word because that would make him happy. And Phil doesn't do this. But Phil doesn't know that he's doing this because he's not used to the apologetics of Hamza Darren Hamza, whatever, Redbeard Hamza, and he doesn't know this, but he still doesn't use it. And Darren said, yeah, but is it like this? Is it? And he tries like 3 different approaches to get him to say the one word, and he will simply not do it. So in the end, he just going.
Yeah. So it's like, are you saying X? Are you saying Y? And it's like, no. Stop putting words in my mouth. I mean, maybe I need to, I don't know whether that'll help, but maybe at some point I need to, I think it's called Rappaport's rules of discussion. I stand corrected if that's not the correct term, but, being charitable and representing your opponent's argument to the best of your ability, so your opponent will go, yep, I couldn't have said it better myself. If you can do that, then A, number one, you're listening, but B, number two, then you can actually have a discussion on what the person actually said and your summary to make sure you understood it and they agree with it. The moment somebody goes, no, how many times did Phil do that? And that's something that if I could at least do one thing, get Darren to listen and represent somebody's argument for what they said, then you can go ahead and argue the point. But when you misrepresent it and just say, are you saying this, and you completely misrepresent them, what's the point of that? Right, here we go. Some of the ones. The hero and addicts from Pucky went to be friends with Rob, and his boyfriend. He want to have 3, some to get money to buy drugs, but he refused. Sorry, threesome. Yeah. It's difficult to read non-English words that are just jumbled up together here. But he refused. Too dirty and ugly for sex. Sorry, mate, you cannot be with a white man friend. You and the black gay Kalam. Both of you too ugly and too smelly. Good, thank you, but no thanks. Okay, sorry. That was complete gibberish. But again, this sort of thing happens. I don't know who this is. Oh, obviously this is somebody that doesn't like Ty. So Ty, for those people who don't know, is he's the black Israelite, Hebrew Israelite that comes down there every so often. And so obviously this is somebody that potentially doesn't like Ty, but thought he'd comment on this one. And I think this was on the conversation with Answer and Muhammad Hijab. So I don't know that this was directly to me as far as I can remember, but there we go. Because Answer's, of course, as we know, another target of some Muslims' outpourings.
And there's just 2 quick things I want to comment on this. The number one thing is no arguments, no facts, no nothing, just personal attacks, just the person, the character, whatever. The second thing is it's always, and this is quite funny, it's always sexual. Because they are so suppressed when it comes to sex, they think that letting go and accusing others of having sex, especially what is the most terrible for them, gay sex, if they bring that into the picture, they think this is an insult. They don't understand that if somebody says to me, well, if you want to be gay, well, okay, this is not a big deal. I'm not shocked by somebody saying you can have gay sex. Yes, I can have gay sex. Well, so fucking what? It's just that I don't like it. So, but I'm free to do what I want. So I'm not shocked by this. And they think that I am horribly offended if I read something like this.
Yeah, they obviously, that for them, that's like a huge sin. So if they can bring that in and for them think or show or in their mind somehow infer that somebody's like that, well, then that person's less than or lower than or quote bad or whatever. And then, but like you say, it's all emotional. There's no actual evidence. But, and again, I don't claim that every Muslim's like this, but the number of commenters who don't bring any evidence, but it's like their personal feelings. Well, great. All it does is help me, collate more crazy comments. So keep going, but don't expect me to take you seriously.
Sorry, Answer. Yes, you're just a sex object. Sorry, mate. That's it.
Hey, if Answer's listening, if you want to join, just type in the chat. I'm reading the comments. I won't hear it, but I'm sure one of the other guys are monitoring the comments. Answer, if you want to join the show, let us know. And that goes for anybody else. So if you're a Muslim or not, and you want to join the show, please let us know in the comments. Hopefully one of my colleagues will pick that up. I'm reading the comments. I won't see the chat, but I will send you a link to friend me on Facebook, and then you can join if you wish. So let me get back.
Mary, the girl, the sister of Moses and Aaron, who got pregnant with Jesus, because Marshall is writing Mary got pregnant at the age of 12. I didn't know that the Quran actually mentions Mary's age.
Don't know, a bit of a tangent, but I noticed that as well. I've watched a couple of the Christian Muslim thing, and of course, what they attempt to do is they might, depending on the mood they're in, kind of try to defend their position, but immediately when they've got a Christian, they'll point to the Bible. And so they will, switch the burden of proof. Even if they've agreed to talk about something else, they will quickly switch over to the Bible. So, that just happens. Oh, well, but what about your Bible that says X, Y, and Z? Well, let's deal with your Quranic claim first. Then you can defend the Bible or not. That happens a lot as well.
Yep.
Right, here we go. Atheists, no matter what efforts you make, your worldview is completely meaningless and absurd. Try to give a meaning to your pathetic lives is never going to happen. And Sabur pointed this out, I guess is what it's meant to be. You are not real atheists. Oh, maybe we pretend atheists. You're emotional, upset atheists trying to give a meaning to a meaningful worldview. Good luck with that. God created man, and the only way man can get peace in his life is by recognizing God. Otherwise, you are following your whims, desires, and your society like cheaps. I suppose that's meant to be chimps.
This is so nice.
It's gold, isn't it? It's just comedy gold. This should all be under a comedy. Maybe I need to change this channel to comedy, really. I put it as education, but I think, the education is just for some of us. The rest, it's all just comedy gold, really.
And the random sprinkling of capitals.
Yes. I understand that, not everybody speaks English, but, there is a spell checker but again, obviously it's just laziness. But putting that aside, I mean, the real point is, your worldview is meaningless and absurd. So you've got to have a celestial dictator to give your life meaning. And then you've got to bow down and be submissive to this dictator because he supposedly created you. And he doesn't need this, by the way, but he wants it. And if you don't do it, then you'll get punished. And they don't see a problem with this. In fact, they see it as a virtue. This is why, I thought about it again today. This is why it's exactly what Hitchens said. It's religion poisons everything. The foundational part of it is like a virus on the brain. Now, some people it affects more than others. Those that are, whose brain hasn't evolved a little bit more are more likely to be poisoned by it. Those that are kind of keeping in the background and it might only, surface every once in a while. But it's like a virus that needs to, needs the antivirus. And hopefully we are doing a little bit of that. And there's many other smart people doing that. And especially ex-Muslims. I think those are the real antivirus people of note. So if we can support them, we will. So shout out to any ex-Muslim who's watching or listening.
Yeah, support me.
There we go. And you, of course. We have one here.
I'll give you my
man himself.
My bank address.
There we go. Support Abu on Patreon. Abu, have you got a Patreon? Please post that.
Yeah, I actually have a Patreon, but I only started it so I could make commercial for Bitcoin instead because I don't like it.
Okay. Yeah, I've started one as well, and I thought, what I could do in future, but I don't go down there enough. If I was going down to Speaker's Corner more regularly, then I'd actually stream it. I'd take my proper camera down and really do a full-on job there with this, and maybe even hire another guy to help me. And then I'd stream it specifically for Patreons only, and then put the recorded videos up later. That would be it. But, one needs money for this. Maybe I should start doing...
People are doing that.
Well, the Dawa people are doing that, aren't they? And they're quite happy to ask for money. I'm like, I don't want to ask people to support me with this sort of thing. But if somebody came to me tomorrow and said, Rob, if you keep doing this and I'll pay 100,000 a year, because that would be the minimum for me to, keep the family going and all the rest of it. I don't live in a hovel. Tomorrow I would, suddenly become, I would do this as for a living, no doubt about it. I'd be at Speaker's Corner every single Sunday pretty much until my wife got very upset with me, or I take her shopping or something and I'd do the Speaker's Corner or whatever. But I do feel like, I can't ask people for money for this sort of thing. But it is a big effort and all that sort of stuff. Although I like to go down there whenever I can. But the Muslim guys have no problem asking for money to support their dawah, etc. Maybe I should ask for it to support the anti-dawah. But then you guys need to be involved as well, because you're doing, and you have done work for much longer than I have. It's just that you can't get down here. What we really need to do, Stops, is get you, somebody could sponsor you permanently. You come and move over here to the UK and you live in London. You could be down there every single Sunday. Oh, that would be beautiful. Anyway, we'll come back to reality now.
We'll have to wait for Elon, the South African, by the way, South African Elon Musk, to bring the Hyperloop to Europe, and then it's a matter of minutes.
Oh, by the way, just on a completely, since you brought that up, that's been debunked. That Hyperloop, never going to get off the ground. Go and watch some videos. Go and watch Thunderfoot's videos on this and other people as well. That Hyperloop is a pipe dream. The way they have set it up, their idea sounds great. In practice, never going to happen. Never.
Also, I think there's too much physics which you can't beat.
Correct. It's physically not possible to build a Hyperloop in the way they think, the distance they want to do, especially out there, with the moving ground and all the rest of it.
What about the prototypes? The
prototypes were pathetic, really. I mean, they had to be powered. They couldn't go more than like 80 meters or something. Go watch it. Thunderfoot's done 3 or 4 videos on this. He's a scientist. He knows his physics very well. He studies and all this.
Is he a chemist?
No, he's a physicist. Because he studied, because he shows videos where he's inside like a nuclear reactor, and he's testing all the the radiation, all this sort of stuff. So I don't know his specific degree. It's easy to look up. I think his name is Phil Mason. So for those who are interested, so as far as I'm concerned, the Hyperloop has been completely debunked. And I think Elon is like a world leader. You win some, you lose some, but it would be useful if you actually had people that could tell you, hey, Elon, this is never going to work. Here's the physics. Here's the reasons why this is never going to work unless you do something completely different. There's a reason why nobody's been able to do this. Sometimes it's because they haven't thought of it, they haven't thought of the right way. And in some cases, particularly the way the Hyperloop has been set up, never going to work. So, and Richard,
I would say that it's, yes, like you have people like Elon Musk, and he named his car company after Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla made he said a lot of crazy things. Made a lot of crazy, drawings of things. But the thing is, some of the things that he came up with, we're using right now to...
Yeah, I agree. Look, the crazy people will change the world. It's just that we don't need to believe all the crazy, don't believe everything that the crazy successful
I don't want
people
to... Look... The really creative people, they must be allowed to make mistakes also, because it's only through that process that we get the really good inventions.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, I see Richard Branson's on the Hyperloop, thing as well. And this is and you think with these sort of people, they would really look into this. They get people that they trust, that are experts, that won't, say, yeah, Richard, it's a good idea, unless it really was a good idea. It's almost like you want a Thunderfoot in your employment to weed out bad ideas immediately, the solar roadways and this sort of nonsense. If you go and look this up, we're all on a tangent here, but it's more about, it kind of relates in the same way, because people are...
The thing is in science, when you pursue these crazy projects, the only thing that will happen is that it will fail. So it doesn't matter. Like you can pursue crazy hypotheses and try to test them and so on. And when you do that, after a while, like you see that it doesn't work. There were scientists in the 19th century who said that this idea about airplanes, that will never work. Like nothing heavier than a bird will ever fly. So,
yes, and of course they didn't know about physics. We know so much more about physics now. You would think that this would, people would be immune, or they'd be able to catch this a lot earlier. But, once you get on it, and once somebody's successful, sort of says something, people again automatically think they have authority. Now, you've got to be a bit careful with that, because somebody may be brilliant in one field and make, like you say, mistakes in another. So we've got to take each claim or each test or each whatever on its own merit. And that was wonderfully pointed out, as I say, with Thunderfoot. All right, let's get back to this, because otherwise we can talk about that. Maybe we should do a show.
I want to get one question in, which
Go
is
for it.
Bringing us. If we are created, with a purpose, which is worshipping. We are not told how to worship. And since God does not need this, if we don't do this, we are punished for eternity. How does all that fit together?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to ask a Muslim, I'm guessing.
I don't understand. What is the pleasure of somebody using different accounts, coming in here and just copy pasting stuff? I don't get this. People are weird.
It's a juvenile mentality, isn't it? They get some pleasure out of it. But that's what was fascinating. Well, of course, but it's like a juvenile mind. They're easily impressed with small things, small shiny things, and doing things like that. There we go. There's another one there. Anyway, let's not be distracted with that. Let's move on to the next one. Otherwise, we'll never get through our crazy comments and even get to the ISIS pamphlet. The brother is giving his view and his opinion of his understanding of the Quran and the Hadiths. Perhaps you do not have the wisdom and intellect to understand his answer, but of course you will get your answers, not to worry. So this is in response to the young Muslim whom I was accused on another channel, or on the live channel, I think. Oh, Rob is picking out the 14-year-old because Sabur just, crushed him. And if you watch the video prior to this, so again, facts are useful rather than emotions and just making up crap as you go along. If you watch the video prior to my one, which is where the Indonesian guy speaks to the young man, he invites him to come and speak on the camera. So this young guy, however old he was, spoke to this Indonesian guy. And then at some point I asked the question, I said, hey, I don't think that you've quite got that. And then we went off on the Quran sort of thing. So it wasn't a case of, oh, let me, people think, and it happened with that old man as well, that older Muslim that heckled me. People think, oh yeah, Rob is going around there looking for the weak. Number one, I don't know who's, quote, weak or doesn't know their things. I'm not going around, let me find the stupidest person here, or the person that I think is most unintelligent to have a conversation with. I mean, I want exactly the opposite. But of course, you just get opinions coming up. So obviously this person thinks that the wisdom, I just don't have the wisdom and intellect to understand his answer, which of course his answer is contradictory, but again, I think it bypasses this particular commenter. Right, laugh out loud. Knowledge. Your man walk away from Shabir's take on Kalam cosmological argument. Okay, so this is in reference to Phil again. So the video that I talked about with the title, don't know of the gaps. So his man walked away from Shabir. This is where the intellect, I face palm myself on a regular basis. Fortunately, I don't do it very, very often physically. But if you go and watch Shabir's video, which is there, is linked to, of course, Phil asked Shabir, hey, you want to defend the Kalam argument? And he kind of doesn't really answer, and then sort of does the Shabir shuffle and eventually get onto evolution. And eventually Phil gets like tired of this. When I found somebody else for him to have a conversation about what he wanted to talk about, then of course he left, and of course their view is how he walks away. So and here's the second part of that. The multiverse model is a fantasy. It's based on the cold spot found in our universe, which is apparently difficult to explain by the Big Bang Theory, but it can be explained. Even one of the people that made the study, Professor Tom Shanks of Durham University, told the RAS. So it's not a fantasy, and of course Phil explained that as well, that it's a prediction of the internal inflation, and there's evidence that points in that direction. It's not certain, but there's certain things that point in that direction. So again, anything to just make, all we could say is, oh, Islam's a fantasy, and we wouldn't have to say anything else. But actually we do care about what's true, whereas many of these commenters don't. They just want to have their own unsubstantiated opinions, which we see all the time. Moving on. Get lost, you atheist monkey, Rob. Your atheist believes got screwed big time. Sabur the lion. Well, here we go. These guys, if there was an Allah, and it's in some ways, I just, I do, the naughty part of me does wish there was some kind of Allah specifically for this lot, because that would be shirk, and then, they could go to hell, or whatever would happen to them for, following Sabur as if he's some kind of prophet or whatever the case is.
What this is shirk?
Isn't that shirk? When you appear to follow or worship, almost. I'm paraphrasing. Worship, another human being.
I think you're going too far to say that. You're saying that Sabur is a lion, like there were.
He's like a messiah. They seem to worship him like a messiah. He's the dude.
No, but you can love someone for Allah.
Okay, but that's not the way that they are appearing to to do this here. They really admire the guy, like, you know, he's the second coming of Muhammad. I mean, that's the impression I get. They're not saying that, obviously, but that's the impression that I get here.
Shabur, but it wasn't this video when you were kind of tired and you were not quite listening to what he was saying.
Yeah, I was very charitable in that thing, and I let him go on and on. I would never do that again. But, you know, my mistake. Hey, it happens. So but again, when you go to speakers' corners, you know, anybody can, but the intention was to try and make me look foolish. And of course, all that did was then make me look into all of his claims. And now I know exactly his approach and what he's done and how he's been refuted by Stop Spamming, by Essence of Thought, by the Rationalizer, you know, many people. Who else?
Aaron Ra.
Aaron Ra, yeah. I mean, the list is fairly extensive. So, you know, you have to be saying a lot of nonsense to be refuted by so many people. And so,
but Rob, you've got a point, because I saw in a video somewhere where somebody was talking to one of these other idiots, and then he said, well, you guys are not scientifically educated. And they said, yes, we are, blah, blah, blah. He said, yeah, but you don't believe, like, you don't even accept evolution. Let me go and get Sabur and he will sort you out. So he is now seen by the Dawa people at Speaker's Corner as the expert, the go-to when it comes to evolution, even though he has no fucking clue what evolution actually is. And I've shown this, and others have shown that he doesn't even understand it. And yet people say, if it's about evolution, let me get Sabur, he will sort you out. This is the way that it is. So they do sort of worship in a way where they're saying that he is the expert now. He is now the Muslim scientist who has refuted evolution.
So all I have to ask, here's the difference. And I've said it, I think, before. If not, I've thought about it anyway. We're all ignorant on many things. It's trivially easy to go to Speaker's Corner and try to make a fool of anybody. You just have to ask them on a topic they do not understand and then be disingenuous about it. But besides that, even if my worldview was completely refuted, or my position was, that doesn't mean aren't other smart atheists like the rest of you guys here and around the world. So all you've done is say, hey, Rob, you don't know something. I'm quite happy to hold up my hand and say I'm ignorant on certain topics. The difference is I can go and educate myself, speak to people like yourselves and others, and get the information. That's the difference. So for him, he can't do that. There's nowhere for him to go. So all he can do is continue with the tactics. But I can easily educate myself. And that's the antidote to ignorance. What's the antidote to dishonesty and disingenuousness? I don't know, you know, and a lobotomy or something probably. So, you know, we're in a completely different playing field. But hey, you know, this is the sort of comments we get. So delusions, I think, you know, Muslim delusions, these sort of comments just show that very easily. Speaker's Corner UK. Phil, you know what your problem is? You are a sheep. You are just awestruck when people talk gibberish that you don't understand. Now, is he speaking to me or Phil? Phil, you know what your problem is? Now, is he speaking to Phil or me? I don't know. Anyway, you are a sheep. I don't know if he's speaking to me or Phil. But anyway.
Feel like
He's speaking too far. Just awestruck when people talk gibberish that you don't understand. Suddenly they become experts for you. Well, if this clueless idiot knew anything, he'd know that Phil understands exactly what these people are talking about. He reads these papers. He interviews these people. So maybe he's not a world-famous cosmologist, but he understands the language, just like a mathematician would understand what other mathematicians are talking about. He doesn't have to be a professional mathematician. Or, for example, like Ozzy Mendes Ramazis. You know, he's not a professional philosopher, but he understands it, he studied it, etc. So now, you know, if they start talking philosophy, he's right up there. Same with Phil.
But Rob, this is hypocrisy at its best, because even when you have Professor Dawkins, Professor Krauss, Professor anybody there, they will tell you the same thing, and then they will still not accept it. So what's the point?
Well, exactly. Talk gibberish, and of course, it's gibberish to the uninitiated or to the ignorant. To those people that understand what they're talking about, of course, it's not gibberish. But again, you know, if you're ignorant and you have a worldview to defend, then the easiest thing is just to throw out comments like gibberish. Well, when you say gibberish, then of course that just shows how little you know on the topic. So really, you should be keeping very quiet, sitting at the back of the classroom and taking notes instead of shouting the odds. The man has literally no credentials aside from the fact that he interviewed guys who have. Well, again, you're a clueless cretin. He has, in fact, studied this, but nevertheless. Also, the claims that he doesn't know shit. Okay, again.
Doesn't make
so
sense,
that's sort of gibberish. Unless you bring an overwhelming amount of evidence that points towards atheism, then you have legs to stand on. So keep it. Oh, dear.
This is so funny. They always think that if you're talking about cosmology or something, this has something to do with a non-belief in gods or something. It's quite strange.
It's like we need to do a class on what atheism is for every single Muslim out there and ensure that they write a test and pass with 100%, which would mean we'd have to be waiting years. Maybe that's what the word infinity means, trying to get Muslims to understand what atheism is. You wait for infinity.
And what is evidence? There is no evidence towards not believing that gods exist. It's the only evidence that, I mean, anything that will kill my non-belief is presenting me with a god. I will immediately stop not believing this, and that's it.
Yeah, I've said the same. I'd be devastated if that was the case. It'd be a celestial North dictatorship, North Korea come to Earth, but I'd have to believe it. It'd be terrible, though. And there we go.
But how can you? I would love to ask him, what kind of evidence would he expect that points towards? Okay, I hate this word atheism because there is no ism in not believing something. I would love to know what he expects. What kind of evidence would he accept where he says, yes, you've got a point? I mean, it's this. There's a Christian also as well. He's also saying, can atheism be accurate and correct? If you bring me evidence, then I will believe it. He doesn't understand these things. It doesn't matter whether you're Muslim or Christian. They always have the same. A lot of these people have the same sort of attitude towards us, and I'd love to know what kind of evidence they're actually expecting, or what are they thinking of. It's weird.
But it's just a complete misunderstanding, confusion over atheist. They confuse atheism, like you say, with naturalism, because traditionally, most atheists would probably be naturalists, but not all.
Or cosmologism and Darwinism.
Yeah.
And of course, gravitism.
Yeah, so there's always a confusion there with this. What they should say is probably naturalism. That would represent most people's views, possibly. But again, that might be a stretch. Not everybody would consider themselves a naturalist. But regardless, well, I mean, again, you could point to tons of evidence in that regard. So yes, obviously. But of course, we've got to disprove God. I mean, you asked the key question. Stops. You asked the key question, and that would be the question for this clueless cretin, which would be, what evidence would you accept that would change your mind? And if you can't give that, then why are you even asking the question? If you don't know what evidence would bring that would change your mind, why would you even bring up that sentence? It's just like a throwaway comment. Right, moving on. Speaker's Corner. Yes, of course, since no one knows, speak for yourself. So he's quoting me here. Speak for yourself. Oh, I forgot. Misery loves company. Okay. Nothing to do with God of the Gaps. Our book of signs, the Quran, is a miracle. Your refusal to step outside your blind faith in future cosmological discoveries that you can never tell you the origin of the universe, because scientism is the wrong tool, is your problem. Quran, the scatterers, 47, and the heaven we constructed with strength. And indeed, we are its expander. Have you read the Quran?
Come on, you got to hand it to him. You are now going to drop on your knees and worship.
Yep, that's definitely done it for me. I mean, that's just, okay, I know I'm being a bit facetious here, but, when you have so many of these idiotic comments, at some point you just got to laugh, and you try to take them seriously, but, that's a huge amount of effort on our part here.
Scatterbrain.
Scientism, yeah. The scatterers, I guess that's Surah 47, somewhere in there. We constructed with strength. What strength did you construct the heavens with?
I think it's 51:47. This is the expansion miracle.
Oh, the one that came after Hubble realized or showed that the universe was expanding. And no translation before that ever said that. It was just space or vastness or whatever. But again, somebody like that that would bypass this person's ability to take that all in. Here's somebody who had a lot to say. This person should come on the show. I didn't learn anything from Phil except a hodgepodge of personal and theoretical pseudoscience that hasn't been proved and probably never will. And if you believe Phil is talking sense, then I suggest you reevaluate your belief.
Yeah, but this is the level. This is the level. Oh, fuck.
It is gold, isn't it? Well, that's all I can say. This is, anyway, we've spoken about it many times. This is the response to Phil's video. And sometimes I think, maybe you've just got to be a bit stronger, like, Krauss or somebody else, because you've got so many cretinous people like this that all they need is for you to give them some kind of certainty. But of course, Phil is quite knowledgeable, and so he's very careful of not doing that. And I think almost there needs to be a middle ground. But then you can be caught out by people going, hang on a moment, why have you said something that sounds certain when we don't know? So he's always erring on that side of the fence, which is the correct side. But then you get, just the masses of credulous people like this making comments like this. So
and this is why I would suggest to him to go for something that is ironclad. This is what I always try and do. And I say to them, okay, show me how distance, speed, time relationships are going to be destroyed somehow. Show me how this is possible. This will not get destroyed. Or the example that you bring, I think, is also worth gold. Do you think that one day we're going to find out that the sun is rotating or orbiting Earth? Do you really think that? Do you think this will get changed at some stage? So those are the things which you need to put out there and saying, well, 1,000 years ago, we had the first sort of inclination that this might be the case. And then subsequent observation showed us, hey, yes, that is the way that it is. And now we're looking at the universe and we're looking, well, there are certain indications here for the Big Bang. And now we are working on finding out what the real situation is, just as we did with gravity, with cosmology, with all the other things. You need to start not at what we don't know, but what we do know. I think this is a different approach.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the whole thing of people wanting certainty where science doesn't have that. And, if they don't get that, then, for them, it's a weakness. And that's the kind of mentality one has to overcome or educate out of a lot of these people. But again, they probably haven't had a proper education, or if they have, it's been ingrained in some way and it's overridden critical thinking. And, and again, this sort of thing just shows they hear what they want to hear. If they don't hear certainty, if they hear a certain word, they lock onto that word, and that then is the entire argument. And it's baffling and very sad, I think, as well. But there we go.
Yeah, I don't know of the gaps. I think that's symptomatic.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely right. Unless you come there with concrete, evidence or proof, you're open to interpretation or whatever the case is. Even when the smartest people in the world, go quite far. Like Alan Guth says, I don't know if the universe had a beginning, possibly not, or probably not. It may be eternal, but nobody knows. For them, so he's going further than a lot of cosmologists would, and he's the inventor of inflationary theory or the inflationary model. And but even that's not good enough. Now that's quite a stretch in cosmological circles to go that far. But for the layperson, that's not enough. Unless somebody came out tomorrow and said, yep, this is definitely it. Even if somebody did that, let's say tomorrow we actually found out that the universe was eternal. Do you think are they going to accept that? All they'll go back to is, oh, well, science is not absolute, is it? It could be wrong. Even if you gave them certainty, you gave them all the mathematics, all the observations, and we said it's as definitive as evolution, they'd find some reason to dismiss it. So it's like you're playing with one hand behind your back, because they've got this, view that they have to defend against. How does Aaron Ra put it? You defend without reason that which you have no reasons to believe in, or whatever. He's got a good way of saying it. You probably know it stops better than I do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I do. And
yes.
I had it the other day and I forgot it too.
Jump in the moment you remember it again, but it's well said in any case. So, yeah. That was pathetic from Phil. Only thing I learned from Phil is that he doesn't know anything. Well, there you go.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
It's like the brain has just completely gone into neutral, probably in reverse even. They absolutely learned nothing, and that's the sad thing, really. It's like somebody's pulled the power plug out, and there's no lights on. There's supposed to be somebody. You're knocking at the door, and somebody's at home, but there's no lights on there. It's just sad. I think this is the last one. I'm getting close to it. Quran alone is a perfect and complete book for all mankind. What a wonderful assertion. But some of the verses are time, area, and people specific, and you know this how? So to understand its proper and exact meaning, one has to go through the hadith or its background tafsir. Well, great. Then the Quran is not complete, as this is just...
Give me a list. Which one is what?
But geez, now you're asking for specific. Hang on, stops. You can't ask for specifics. All they want is this willy nonsense. As soon as you get to specifics for people like this, they'll run for the hills. So no. Please don't ask difficult questions like that. think that brings us to the end of them. And here's one not crazy comment that I thought was great. And this comes from TDS Dave. Here we go. So he was responding to another credulous person. Yeah, let's hope Robin Full learned something from this. From the comments, this is Dave speaking. From the comments, I imagine they've learned that Muslim commentators are incapable of listening. That this is all a football match to those guys. It's nothing about truth. No matter how their team performs, they'll gush at their success. From the presentation, they probably have learned that Hamza can't listen. No surprises there. I'll wager within months we'll have another video from him saying Stephen Hawking's authority says, even though it's been pointed out here and on other occasions, Stephen Hawking has not said anything of the sort for 30 years and specifically says it is not necessarily the case today. Hamza demonstrates this when asking about time before the Big Bang. Again, he was not listening. Phil specifically defined the Big Bang as the period from after the Planck era. Now, if Hamza was not so keen on hearing his own voice spout nonsense, he'd have thought era. Now, that's a period of time. So Phil offered yes to time before the Big Bang because his definition of the Big Bang started from after a period of preceding time. Also, Phil is an atheist, so Hamza's generalizations atheists tell him falls flat on his face when the atheist he's speaking to is not. Yet Muslims in the comments keep saying Hamza is a beast, though he's plainly wrong. Yay, go team, dumb apologetic Islamic apologist. And I thought that was a wonderful way to finish. So thanks for bringing some coherence and sense again. Do love you, Dave. You've got a way with your comments that I think, and Dave was down again, so it was great to see him there at Speaker's Corner, but he's got a way with words in the comments. So thank you to Dave. So we've done a lot of comments there. Before we get into ISIS, I just want to see if there's any other comments here from Raven's been very quiet, and Abu, and obviously Stops. Anything else on these comments?
And that apparently Anaj Khan is trying to join.
Let me have a look at that. 1 second, Raven. Let me just check. Is somebody...
No worries.
Ah, here we go. Okay, here's somebody. I think this gentleman is a non-believer, as far as I know. So I will give this to him. Right, go ahead, Raven. I'm just typing here to this gentleman in Facebook. So, yeah, give us your thoughts.
No, I was just listening to...
Turn yourself down. You're very loud there. Well, let me turn you down. I'm going to say. Oh. Okay, keep speaking. I'll just turn you down a little bit here. Carry on.
How am I doing now?
Go ahead now.
Am I okay?
Yeah, that sounds okay to me.
Sweet. Yeah, nothing to say. Just mostly just listening to the amusing comments.
Yes, they are. But it's I think as Stops and Abu have kind of pointed out, it's symptomatic of some Muslims' mindset. Again, I'm not going to claim it's everybody.
It's absolutely amazing how they don't know what they're talking about. It's just, you know, I don't know what you'll think of this, but I've actually been thinking of doing sort of like a reverse troll. Right, it's like I create this account, give myself a Muslim name, make sure it's all nice in Arabic, and then every time you have Muslims just doing what we kind of expect, I'm gonna lambaste them as Islamophobic. Every time a Muslim makes a threat, oh, look at that, you know, look at that, a Muslim threatening violence, what a surprise, how unusual, fuck you, Islamophobe. And then just basically a reverse troll just to see what the response is.
Well, if you've got the time and energy for it, yeah, definitely go for it. I just can't be bothered. I mean, I put the comments up here again because it's somewhat entertaining and it points towards the mindset of some of them. But yeah,
I actually do hope I get the time and energy. It'd be fun. It's just, I mean, the reason I ain't even been on a show in ages is like I haven't had a free Friday night. I've been busy. It's annoying.
Oh, and I see somebody in the comment here. So everybody in Speaker's Corner is a hate preach. Oh, yes, that's a pet peeve of mine. And by the way, who are the only people that say this? I won't give you more than one guess. So Muslims are always saying hate preacher, this one, that one, you know, it's particularly towards a couple of the Christians like Lizzie and some of, what's his name, Jay Smith's crowd. So anybody that challenges Quran and brings actual, oh, Stops, you'd be a hate preacher, you know, the moment you stepped into the corner. Because that's, you know, that somehow makes them feel better. Let's not deal with the actual position. Let's just lambaste and label people as hate preachers. So, yeah, I'm just going to quickly see here. Carry on there for a moment. I just want to see if this gentleman's going to join. Hopefully he will. I mean, he'll come in at his own time. And we'll see. As I say, I think he is a non-believer. Should we get on then? And I'll read now a little bit on which is obviously what the show's about. I'll read a little bit of the pamphlet here, which I think will be quite interesting. Now, before I do, I will obviously want to clarify that most Muslims, decry ISIS. But what we want to hear, and you'll see it now when I show it, that this is fairly professional. And I guess that just means that, they've got some money behind them somewhere. But
they at least had very professional guys. Yeah, they had the money, but I think.
Yeah.
What date is this from?
15th issue. Let me just see if I can see here. Does it give it dates?
It says 1437.
Where did you see that? I'm looking there. Oh, is that the date? Okay. And what does that refer to? 1437.
The Islamic date.
Is that the Islamic date? Okay, I'm sure you can work out when that's supposed to be. So this is obviously issue 15 of the official ISIS online magazine. It's actually called the Islamic State Magazine 1522. It's a PDF version. And really what I wanted to
2 years ago.
Okay.
So that was probably before.
That was when they were in the height of their doing what they were doing.
Had some kind of professional dudes. If I remember this correctly, one was I think was Greek American or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And then
you can see it's very professionally done, no doubt about that. The one that we're going to have a look at here, and again, maybe I can post this somewhere for people to read on their own. But this one here, Why We Hate You and Why We Fight You. So if we go down to that, this is in their words, let's call it that. And before I do that, I'm just going to cough here.
Cough, cough.
There we go. Excuse me. I don't want to read this whole thing, but I do want to read part of it here. So let me just get to the part. Just see where it is that we want to start. Is it here? Let's see. Okay, so I'm starting about in the middle on the paragraph on the left there. One would think that the average Westerner by now would have abandoned the tired claim that the accusations of the Mujahideen, who have repeatedly stated their goals, intentions, and motivations, don't make sense. Unless you truly and naively believe that the crimes of the West against Islam and the Muslims, whether insulting the Prophet, burning the Quran, or waging war against the Caliphate, won't prompt brutal retaliation from the Mujahideen, you know full well that the likes of the attacks carried out by Omar Mateen, La Rossi Abala, and many others before and after them in revenge for Islam and the Muslims make complete sense. The only thing senseless would be for there to be no violent, fierce retaliation in the first place. Many Westerners, however, are already aware that claiming the attacks of the Mujahideen to be senseless and questioning incessantly as to why we hate the West and why we fight them is nothing more than a political act and a propaganda tool. The politicians will say it regardless of how much it stands in opposition to facts and common sense, just to garner as many votes as they can for the next election cycle. The analysts and journalists will say it in order to keep themselves from becoming a target for saying something that the masses deem to be politically incorrect. The apostate imams in the West will adhere to the same tired cliche in order to avoid backlash from the disbelieving societies in which they've chosen to reside. The point is, people know that it's foolish, but they keep repeating it regardless because they're afraid of the consequences of deviating from the script. There are exceptions among the disbelievers, no doubt, people who will unabashedly declare that jihad and the laws of Sharia, as well as everything else deemed taboo by the Islam is a peaceful religion crowd, are in fact completely Islamic. But they tend to be people with far less credibility who are painted as a social fringe, so their voices are dismissed, and a large segment of the ignorant masses continues believing the false narrative. As such, it becomes important for us to clarify to the West in unequivocal terms, yet again, why we hate you and why we fight you. Number one, we hate you first and foremost because you are disbelievers. You reject the oneness of Allah, whether you realize it or not. By making partners for him in worship, you blaspheme against him, claiming he has a son. You fabricate lies against his prophets and messengers, and you indulge in all manner of devilish practices. It is for this reason that we are commanded to openly declare our hatred for you and our enmity towards you. There has already been for you an excellent example in Abraham, those with him when they said to their people, "Indeed, we are disassociated from you and from whatever you worship other than Allah. We have rejected you, and there has arisen between us and you enmity and hatred forever until you believe in Allah alone." Al-Mutamara, number 4, whatever that is. Furthermore, just as your disbelief is the primary reason we hate you, your disbelief is the primary reason we fight you, as we have been commanded to fight the disbelievers until they submit to the authority of Islam, either by becoming Muslims or paying jizya, for those afforded this option, and living in humiliation under the rule of the Muslims. Thus, even if you were to stop fighting, your best case scenario in a state of war would be that we would suspend our attacks against you, if we deemed it necessary, in order to focus on the closer and more immediate threats, before eventually resuming our campaigns against you. Apart from the option of a temporary truce, this is the only likely scenario that would bring you fleeting respite from our attacks. So in the end, you cannot bring an indefinite halt to our war against you. At most, you could only delay it temporarily and fight them until there is no fitna, thank you, paganism, and until the religion, all of it, is for Allah. Al-Bakri 193. Number 2, we hate you because your secular liberal societies permit the very things that Allah has permitted, while banning many of the things that he has prohibited and permitted. A matter that doesn't concern you because separate between religion and state. Is that the same thing? I'm guessing it is, yeah. Separate between religion and state, thereby granting supreme authority to your whims and desires via the legislators you vote into power. In doing so, you desire to rob Allah of his right to be obeyed, and your wish to usurp the right yourselves. We'll talk all about this shortly. Legislation is not but for Allah. Yusuf 40. Your secular liberalism has led you to tolerate and even support gay rights. I know, can you believe it? To allow alcohol, drugs, fornication, gambling, and usury to become widespread, and to encourage the people to mock those who denounce these filthy sins and vices. As such, we wage war against you to stop you from spreading your disbelief and debauchery. Your secularism and nationalism, your perverted liberal values, your Christianity and atheism. There we go. They spelt it correctly, at least. And all your depravity and corruption they entail. You made it your mission to liberate Muslim society. We've made it our mission to fight off your influence and protect mankind from your misguided concepts and your deviant way of life. I'll just go down to number 6 on the next page and we'll sort of stop there. In the case of the atheist fringe, we hate you and wage war against you because you disbelieve in the existence of your Lord and Creator. Yeah, of course we do. You witness the extraordinary complex makeup of created things and the astonishing and I've gone tongue-tied there. Inexplicably precise physical laws that govern the entire universe, but insist that they all came about through randomness, and that one should be faulted, mocked, and ostracized for recognizing that the astonishing signs we witness day after day are the creation of the wise, all-knowing Creator, and not the result of accidental occurrence. Oh, Phil. Yes, speak to Phil, guys. Or were you created by nothing, or were they the creators of themselves? Your disbelief in your Creator further leads you to deny the day of judgment, claiming that you only live once. Those who disbelieve have claimed that they will never be resurrected. Yes, say yes, by my Lord, you will surely be resurrected. Then you will surely be informed of what you did. And that for Allah is easy. We hate you, number 4, we hate you for your crimes against Islam and wage war against you to punish you for your transgressions against our religion. As long as your subjects continue to mock our faith, insult the prophets of Allah, including Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, burn the Quran and openly vilify the laws of the Sharia, we will continue to retaliate, not with slogans and placards, but with bullets and knives. Number 5, we hate you for your crimes against the Muslims. Your drones and fighter jets bomb, kill, and maim our people around the world. And your puppets in the usurped lands of the Muslims oppress, torture, and wage war against anyone who calls to the truth. As such, we fight to stop you from killing our men, women, and children, to liberate those of them whom you imprison and torture, and to make revenge for the countless Muslims who have suffered as a result of your deeds. Number 6, we hate you for invading our lands and fight you to repel you and drive you out. As long as there is an inch of territory left for us to reclaim, jihad will continue to be a personal obligation on every single Muslim. The last bit there. What's important to understand here is that although some might argue that your foreign policies are the extent of what drives our hatred, this particular reason for hating you is secondary secondary. Hence the reason we addressed it at the end of the above list. The fact is, even if you were to stop bombing us, imprisoning us, torturing us, vilifying us, and usurping our lands, we would continue to hate you because our primary reason for hating you will not cease to exist until you embrace Islam. Even if you were to pay the jizya and live under the authority of Islam in humiliation, we would continue to hate you. No doubt we would stop fighting you then, as we would stop fighting any disbelievers who enter into a covenant with us, but we would not stop hating you. And we can carry on there, but I think that's given us plenty to discuss. So I'm going to open up the mic now to my colleagues here. And
I can actually sum up pretty much the entirety of that pamphlet in one sentence. They're whining about not being able to persecute. You are persecuting me by not allowing me to persecute you. That's it.
Yeah, true.
Now, obviously, I'm sure if you're a Muslim watching this and you want to come on here and tell us why that's not true, then obviously we're keen to hear that.
No, you can't. Well, you can't, because it says so in the Quran. I mean, the way that people come up against this is they say, well, there are also other sentences we say something different. So all they do is they show the contradiction, and that's it. Because you can't go around the sentences in the Quran. The only thing that you can say, yeah, but there are others, and well, this one was there for a specific reason. This was only for our self-defense, and of course we are allowed to defend ourselves. It's impossible, because all you need to do is you say, well, hang on, who is defending whom, where, and when? Because you can't just say, well, you are always attacking us, you, the non-Muslims. Excuse me, the Spanish people never invaded Arabian Peninsula or anything like that. It was the Muslims who came into the Spanish Peninsula, or Iberian Peninsula, and that's it. So you can't, they always take cause and effect. And then they're saying, well, you are attacking us and we are just defending ourselves. And then they go to a point in history where it is that, well, predominantly Christians, like with the Crusades and things like that, went and attacked the Muslims who were going in and occupying Jerusalem. So there's no way that you can actually do anything with these arguments. You're always going to run around in circles, and it becomes emotional, just like this pamphlet. And at the end of the day, they are summarizing it themselves very well. Even if you stop everything, we're still going to hate you because you don't do what we'd want.
We have a problem with you not allowing us to persecute. I mean, when you get to these comments like, oh, well, we're doing it because you're attacking us. Okay, then explain Sweden. Why are you attacking Sweden?
Their response would be, of course, that there was
actually,
cartoons.
Sweden have military personnel to educate Kurds and so on.
Well, I guess
against ISIS.
I guess what Raven is saying is that there are attacks going on in Sweden, and how can you point fingers at Sweden, who's an extremely liberal society that is not engaged in any of these wars?
No, but they are indirectly waging war against ISIS.
Mm-hmm. Well, is there any country you can think of that is not in any way whatsoever doing that? That might be now, but has been attacked by them before they engaged in any action?
I don't know. There were 2 Japanese guys that were beheaded, but
you're trying hard to find a reason here.
Yeah,
hang on. Why did Iraq invade Kuwait?
Oh, for the oil, I guess, was it? Or
no, they wanted access to the sea. But did Kuwait first invade Iraq? No, they did not. So why did Iraq invade Kuwait? Easy.
Because they're deviant Shias.
Well, they would obviously point to Saddam Hussein and go, oh, he's a dictator. That's not representative of Islam. So they always have this way out. Well, that's not. None of these people are really Islam. If you just followed my version of Islam, I hear this all the time in Speaker's Corner, then the world would be a great place, and you deviant, Westerners, your, corrupt societies would be brilliant if we just followed mine. All the rest of these Muslim countries who have tried to implement a version of Sharia, they've all got it wrong. But me, the knowledgeable Muslim standing in Speaker's Corner, hey, if you follow my version of Islam then and my Sharia, then it'll all be great.
Exactly. So what you need to do is then go, well, this is my favorite thing, of course. You go back to the Quran and you say, well, excuse me, does your version have no slavery? So are you now saying that there are certain sentences in the Quran which are superfluous, which we should simply ignore? Are you saying that the God who wrote the Quran made a mistake, that your version is better than the God's version? Is that what you're saying? And the whole thing suddenly stops.
Yeah, well, of course, what they have to do then is interpret it personally and go, hey, no, this interpretation, and, you know, Saracen's a great example where, you know, I follow this imam and that one, and he interprets it this way. And my whole point is, if it was supposedly really from God, it should be crystal clear. There should be zero interpretations necessary. There should be one universal interpretation that nobody could possibly get wrong. If that's not the case, either God is incompetent or he doesn't really want to get the message across.
And without requiring a context and without referring to certain events.
Yes, and if it said, hey, do you know what? You know, kill every Jew behind this stone or that bush or whatever the case is, at the time of, you know, the Qurayshi invasion, supposedly, blah, 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 then, you know, but in every other aspect, you should not do it. And that's my command as Allah. Now we would have it crystal clear. We would never, no Muslim would ever attack anybody else. It was only at the time of the Qurayshi, etc. That would be, and of course it's not. It's so vague and you can make up anything you want. But you know, this is what's happened here. Of course, it's vision with the West, and now we need to make this palatable for the West. So we'll come up with an interpretation, and we'll make these claims in this one. And that's what I said to the young guy. And of course, you know, other people can have their own responses. How come so many people can misinterpret this? And your interpretation is right. You'll bring your evidence. We've listened to ISIS there. I don't claim that they're right, but they are giving plausible interpretations, and they're bringing from the Quran. Now, if this Quran was so perfect and so great and so easy to understand, it would be trivially easy to have one interpretation, and we wouldn't have these conflicts and the misinterpretations and 15,000 different scholars having different interpretations. But this,
Abu, what is your facet? What is your approach?
I was just taking a quick walk. You'll be back in a moment.
Oh, okay, sorry, because I thought that should be interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we will ask him at the moment. One of these guys here, I'm battling to, this gentleman wants to join. Every time I send him the link, he says get a page that doesn't.
But for me, what is absolutely astonishing is the intolerance in this pamphlet, that they will simply not acknowledge that anyone has the right to live who does not agree with them. You need to agree or you will be tortured, you will be killed or whatever. And this for me is absolutely amazing, how people today in the 21st century can still think like that.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, that's their view. They, you know, they're not looking for truth. They don't want to debate. They have the truth already, and there's no discussions, no debates. We've got the truth. You submit to the truth, or, you know, we use physical violence. And that's their.
I think one of the things to point out, though, when Stops says it's amazing in the 21st century, they're not in the 21st century. When it comes to culture, when it comes to mentality,
Okay,
it's not a 21st century mindset.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, it's a 7th century mindset in the 21st century, and that's what we find, you know, just so abhorrent, really. You know, there's, and the whole thing. I think we can all say it here, and I'm sure you guys would agree. You know, we don't hate Muslims. Pretty much, I don't personally hate Muslims, but I do very much dislike this ideology that appears to infect them to some degree or other, to a point where you've got what some people consider the extreme, although, you know, the argument can easily be made seemingly that they're much more close to following Muhammad's example. But then, of course, you'd hear the Muslims in Speaker's Corner crying about how that's not the case and how, you know, they've misunderstood it. But of course, the Muslims in Speaker Corner have all got it right, and ISIS and everybody else have all got it wrong.
But when you actually look within the Islamic world, you see there are these people who say, okay, no, they're not Muslims, things like that. But I mean, you know, just a couple of years ago, CNN actually published a report saying that there is an alarming number of ISIS sympathizers among American Muslims. And like what we've just recently happened in Egypt, the Egyptian government have basically, what they've done is they've had a scorched earth policy against this group. But one of the things that makes it so difficult is that Egyptian citizens are sympathizing with them and sheltering them. I was talking just before the show, I was talking to Rob on Skype, and I mentioned an article I read a while ago. There was this Egyptian lad who was being interviewed about a mate of his that he's known since childhood who went off to join ISIS, and he's saying, well, we've been in the mosque, we've been in the masjid. I think he studied at Al-Azhar in Cairo, and he just said, you know, he summed it up very simply. This group is putting into practice what we've been taught our entire lives is what God wants.
True.
Are you back there, Abu?
Yeah.
Actually,
You're
Abu,
talking about that.
is there? Would you mind if I gave you a link? It's in Arabic, so I'd love if we could get your take on it.
Sure.
While he's doing that, Abu, I think Stops wanted your view on something. Stops, what was it that you wanted to ask Abu about his view on?
No, on this whole topic, what?
Oh, okay.
Because there are different ways of looking at it. Because I find this 100% political, where the only time that a justification is given is that you need to somehow take your authority from something that does not exist. And that's the only religious aspect to the whole thing. The rest is 100% politics.
Well, I mean, there are more or less plausible interpretations of Islam, and I would say that ISIS is one of the more plausible interpretations. But there's
Literal.
some, I would say, plausible. I mean, but like, if you go back to, if you have a Salafi view of things, that you say that you interpret the Quran and the Sunnah based on what the first generation of Muslims believed, and that is clearly what the Hadiths points out, then I would say that what ISIS are doing, it's one of the most plausible interpretations. But there are more kind of soft interpretations, like the Saudi one, the mainstream Saudi interpretation. And then you have like more. Now you also have Hayat Tahrir Sham. That was the former Al-Nusra guys that are very similar to ISIS, but now they are fighting against each other. And the Nusra guys, or former Nusra guys, call ISIS Khawarij and so on, although they're very similar. But I would say, I think if I would make an kind of an honest look at the like Quran and Sunnah, and in the light of the Salaf al-Salih, I would say that Tahrir Sham is the guys that are the most plausible interpretation. And ISIS on second place.
Speaking of plausible, are you all right if I just try and find that link that I wanted you to look at? Oh, and Stops. Sorry, not Stops. Rob, would you mind screen sharing it so that people viewing can see?
Yeah.
But just to
is it in Arabic?
It's in Arabic, yes.
I'm not sure how that'll help
basically,
viewers,
so
but
the
okay.
and I mentioned this to you, Rob, on Skype before the show, that the Al-Azhar Masjid in Cairo, you know, it's pretty much like their version of the Vatican. You know,
Just tell people what that is, please.
The Vatican is
not the
holy
Vatican.
see of Roman Catholicism.
Yeah, no, people know that. I mean, Al-Azhar. Tell people what that is.
The right, so it's a Masjid. A Masjid is it's a religious school. It's kind of like what a university would be if a university was focused purely on theology. So it's not necessarily a university as we think of it, but like you know, just it's where you get these, like, you know, scholars a penny. Anyway, and it was created. I think it was a caliph. What was his name? Oh, I remember now. Yeah. So the Al-Azhar Masjid in Cairo was built. I think it was about 1,000 years ago by a caliph by the name of Al-Muzi bin Allah. And just like I said, it is pretty much, you know, like it's pretty much as high as you can go. There is no higher authority in Sunni Islamic doctrine, at least that I'm aware of.
Wait, are you talking about Al-Azhar now?
Yeah. AL-AZHAR.
Yeah, but the thing is, Al-Azhar, if I remember this correctly, they were think it was created during Dawla Fatimiyya. They were a kind of Shiite sect.
Yeah. But anyway, so I think it was in 2004. I think it was in December of 2014. They had a conference. I think it was called I'll just scroll down because I mentioned it to Rob.
I've posted a link.
They had a conference on terrorism. It's International Counterterrorism Conference in Cairo, and there was that Nigerian. Yeah. So basically, they declined to pronounce takfir against the Islamic State. There are all these scholars that came from all around the world that are so learned in Islam. And again, keep in mind that this institute is like the highest authority of Sunni Islam in the world. And they have refused to say that the Islamic State is outside of the fold of Islam. And this raises an important question, like... well, the question itself, it doesn't even matter. But there's a link in Arabic that I want to give to Abu to read out.
I have it. I'm reading it now. Wait a minute. I can open it in another browser. 2 seconds.
I've posted in the private chat. I guess that's
from I'll open it in another browser. Give me 2 seconds.
Really interesting thing about it is that there was this Nigerian Mufti by the name of Sheikh Ibrahim Salih Al-Husani, and he actually ended up having to go on the TV because what happened? Because in the recent days with Al-Azhira, they were like sort of after this conference, they were forced to deal with the question of whether members of the Islamic State are heretics, and so this Nigerian Mufti said that by their actions, extremist organizations such as Boko Haram and Nero bring a judgment of heresy upon themselves. Now, Al-Husseini did not say explicitly that the Islamic State were heretic, but he did say that the statements and declarations for these organizations are what brought them to heresy, and that those who accuse others of heresy are themselves viewed as heretics by the Sharia. In other words, he accused the organization of heresy indirectly. However, his statements were interpreted by some media in the Muslim world as a fatwa, declaring that the Islamic State are heretics. Now, Al-Azhar, the Majid, was actually alarmed by the reports that this quote-unquote fatwa of heresy was going about, and so it denied those reports. And this Mufti, he basically had to backtrack for the simple reason that the implication is that Al-Azhar would place itself in direct confrontation with the Islamic State, and that the Egyptian regime has been drawing a parallel between ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood, and an accusation of heresy against the former could be interpreted as applying to the latter as well. And this could escalate the internal conflict in Egypt between the regime on one hand and the Muslim Brotherhood and various other organizations on the other, which could, some fear, lead to civil war in the country. So Al-Azhar and the Nigerian Mufti himself denied the statements that had been attributed to them by some figures in the media. And a couple of days later, in an interview on Egyptian TV, Husseini said that while Islamic State's actions were indeed against Islam and a grave sin that must be condemned, these actions must not be called heretical. And the Majid issued an official statement denying the accusation of heresy. And there's more I could go into, but I'm sure you've had enough of listening to me talk.
Alrighty, let me screen share for Abu there. I'm not sure how much it helps people to see it if they can't understand it, but let's do it anyway. Go for it. You've got it up there, Abu. What is this what you were talking about, Raven? This thing that Abu's got.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, it's that link I gave you on Skype, the Arabic one.
Okay, but what we are looking at now on the screen, is that what you've just talked about?
I can't see it on the screen. Sorry, I can see your. Yeah, I can just see it down below. It's a teeny tiny little thing.
No,
I think that's it.
Everybody there. It's being presented to present to everybody. You should be able to see it now. It should be coming up.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, but I think Abu's just basically going to read in Arabic what you just said there, and nobody can read that Arabic.
Well, obviously, I wanted to, because a lot of people, they always go on about, oh, give sources, give sources. So you know what? You can see the website, you can see the actual website address, and it's in Arabic. So you cannot, and no one can say this is making shit up. This is authentic Islamic news source.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure I was reading through it, so, and he'll basically summarize what you've just said there. But this is one particular person. Somebody else will bring their sheikh who goes, no, that's wrong, or here's the reasons why X, Y, and Z. But I just thought it would be fascinating to hear
it was muted.
the views of people who claim to be ISIS in their well-publicated, in their well-produced magazine there. And their number one reason is because you are disbelievers. And we've heard that, and that's what I've read in the Quran. But Muslims that I speak to are at pains to go, no, that's not really the case. And those that do want to offer a reason why Muslims might attack is the defense reason. We hear it all the time. Hey, it's because you're attacking them. That we only do it in defense. I heard it at the park. You'll hear it in the videos. There's a few videos again. Hey, Muslims only do it in defense. We never attack. Although somebody actually sort of refuted himself, and somebody pointed it out that you can have offense. I think it was Ali Dao who was trying to be a hero on one of the videos, and he did agree that Muslims can go on the offensive, but again they only go on the defensive as a defensive mechanism. So make of that what you will. Abu, over to you.
No, okay.
Just if there's anything there you feel is relevant.
Al-Azhar refused to make takfir on Daesh, on ISIS, but then also later he's talking about them being Khawarij. Where is talking about that? Anyway, but it's the same thing. Like they refuse to make takfir on them, but then they talk about that they are mubtadi'ah, they are making bid'ah, the invention, and the bid'ah that they are making is they are from Khawarij. But that's the same accusation as Hayat Tahrir Sham are doing now, so it's not that radical. But there's also the difference, like Khawarij is a sect of Bid'ah, but it's not a sect that is go out of Islam, so they're still Muslims. You see what I'm saying? That is maybe kind of lost when they say, okay, but they are heretics. Maybe they are translating like Mubtadi'ah or Ahl al-Bid'ah as heretics, but a heretic is maybe not the right word. They are people of invention, but they are still Muslims.
It's absolutely amazing that if you think of all the simple things that will have people screaming takfir and saying this takes you outside of the fold of Islam, but rape, mutilation, crucifixion, religious cleansing, ethnic cleansing, genocide, none of this quite does it. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean,
but the thing is that with crucifixion, all the things, these things are mentioned in the Quran, and these things are mentioned in the Sunnah and the Athar and so on.
So your summary then, Abu, as I understand it, is that ISIS's take on things is a plausible take. It's not the only one. It may or may not be the most plausible one, but it is certainly a plausible one. It's not, as some Muslim apologists will have people believe, they're not a fringe like the KKK or something.
No, it is a plausible interpretation. I said there are a few things that they do that you can, like, for example, do you remember when they burned the pilot, for example?
Mm-hmm.
So the use of burning, there's a hadith, I think it was Ali ibn Abi Talib burned some apostates, and then who was it? I think it was it Abdullah ibn Abbas that came to him and said that no, I heard the Prophet say that only God can use the punishment of burning or something. I can find that later.
But I remember we discussed this on the show about a year ago, and I made that same point, and you said that actually you can get away with it Islamically.
Yeah, because then they are quoting a quote from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, where he says that it is used, it is okay to use in certain circumstances. So so it's not even like burning is usually not recommended, but in certain, if it can be used as tarhib, like what's it called, like to fear, make them fear. There's a better word in English. What do you call one?
You mean a threat?
Deterrent, maybe. If you can use it as a deterrent, or maybe, but as you can use it as as a threat to make people fear, then in some circumstances it's allowed. So it's kind of a plausible thing.
Right. And I mention again, just while we're chatting here, if you're a Muslim or not, and you want to join the conversation, please let us know in the chat. I will ask you to friend me on Facebook. I will send the link again, and then I will send you the Hangout privately so that we don't get spammed here. You're welcome to come in here and share your views. Now, I'm the first to acknowledge that most Muslims, or even a percentage, I don't know how much, I mean, how does one know, are going to claim that ISIS is not representative of Islam or their own views, which I'm happy to accept that people believe that. The question is, can they justify it? And I would be fascinated to listen to some scholar that supports ISIS debate somebody who doesn't, and see how they both bring the sources, and how does one decide.
There are in Arabic, there is, I don't know if he's alive anymore, but there is a debate between Hamas Sheikh and Dawla Islamiyya Sheikh, where they talk about things. But both of them are kind of polite. It's just that the ISIS Sheikh criticize Hamas for not applying Sharia totally, and the Hamas Sheikh like, yeah, but you have to be pragmatic and so on. We're in a very difficult situation, and with the occupation and all the things. For those who know Arabic, it's an interesting debate. The funny thing is that the ISIS guy, or the ISIS Sheikh, he appears to be, he's very calm, very well articulated, very perfect classical Arabic, and like knows every sources and everything.
But Abu, don't we? I think we need to be very clear here, because ISIS does not represent anyone. ISIS is not a group that is in any way in a position to shape Islam. The only thing that ISIS is a viable interpretation or manifestation of Islam, and that's all that it is.
I mean, you can say ISIS is a branch of Al-Qaeda-ism, which is a branch of a mix between Salafism and some Ikhwani tactics.
Exactly. It's one branch of interpretation. It's a possible way of interpreting Islam. It's not that this is, I mean, yes, of course, it is Islam in a way, because this is exactly what they are doing. They are taking the text and saying, well, we understand it as being as such. And that's all that they are doing. So it is very possible to interpret Islam the same way as what they are doing. It's not the only way. And it's not the way of living Islam in your everyday life. And I think we need to be very clear that there is no such thing as a single Islam. It's just one way of interpreting it.
No, I agree. But if you're going to say that it's completely unplausible to interpret Islam the way ISIS interpret it,
no, it's not.
I think that's dishonest. It's
no, exactly. You need to appreciate that this is a viable possibility. It is a viable possibility of interpreting Islam, and the manifestation of what Islam is all about can be seen as one variant of everything, and that is what ISIS is, and that's it.
Yeah, and I think we can also say, and we would say, that a subsection or a majority, who knows, of Muslims don't subscribe to that. So again, we're not painting everybody with that brush, but
it's the same thing with communism and socialism. I mean, we all know that the Russian interpretation was not the perfect way, the same way as the Chinese is not the same, or Cuba. There's different variants.
But this is, if you take like kind of if you compare Islam with Marxism, you look at what Marx and Engels wrote, and you try to deduce from that what is the kind of society we should try to create. Then you could say like, okay, it's like democratic socialism a la Scandinavia. Is that a plausible interpretation? Or is like the more kind of Marxist-Leninist way, like they did in the Soviet Union? Is that a more plausible interpretation? And I would say that the Marxist-Leninist interpretation is more plausible than the social democratic interpretation of it.
Yeah, agree.
I want to just share for a moment. I meant to do this earlier on in the show, and I just want to bring this in again and present this to everybody. This happened earlier today. And so, again, thoughts go out to, I don't care who the people are. You can be an Eskimo, you could be a Sunni, you can be anybody. Perhaps ISIS is maybe the only person that I wouldn't feel some sympathy for. But here were 230 people killed today in an Egyptian attack.
I think it's more than that now.
No, is it? Okay, this has gone up. This was about 2 hours ago. So militants have launched a bomb and gun attack in a mosque in Egypt's North Sinai province, killing 235 people or more, as the case may be. It's the deadliest attack of its kind since the Islamic insurgency in the peninsula was stepped up in 2016. The Egyptian president, who I think is a military dictator, has vowed to respond with brute force. No group has yet claimed the attack, but militants affiliated with so-called Islamic State have been responsible for scores of deadly attacks in the province. They usually target security forces and Christian churches, and the bloody attack on the mosque associated with Sufi Muslims has shocked Egypt.
Were they defending themselves against whom?
Well, exactly. No, well, it's
no, but look. This is a kind of part of the kind of Tekfiri ideology. So the reason why they attacked this mosque was because this was the mosque that security forces went and prayed in, and one part of the difference between kind of Saudi Salafism and the Tekfiri Salafism is that they kind of make Tekfir on people just by being part of security forces of a government that is not ruling with God's law, which is semi-similar to Khawarij. And so that's probably the reason why they attacked this. But there have actually been many kind of smaller attacks going on all the time. There were one, let's see, October 16th, there was one attack where Egyptian soldiers attacked. Some soldiers were killed. September 11 was also an attack in Sinai as well. And 8th of July also an attack. So there's been like many small attacks. It's just that this was a very big one. But this in Sinai is kind of a perfect place for kind of guerrilla franchises of ISIS to operate, because it's like it's not as populated. The population there are kind of not doing very well, so it's easy to find support among the locals and so on.
What they're talking about here is Sufism. I've spoken to one. I met him again. I think it was this Sunday.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a Sufi mosque also, so it's perfect.
So again, for those who don't know, Sufis, again, my understanding is much more limited, but Abu and Stops and Raven can say more, but Sufism is obviously...
Well, Sufism is basically the closest Islam has to mysticism.
Yeah, that's kind of what it says here. The mystical branch of Sunni Islam regularly gathered at the mosque. Although Sufis are widely accepted across much of the Muslim world, some jihadist groups, including ISIS, see them as heretics. And when I've spoken to the gentleman in Speaker's Corner, very reasonable guy in the sense that, you can have a very rational, quiet, sensible conversation with him. He's got mystical beliefs, so he sees things more in a case of like, almost like everything is one and the universe is sending us messages and that sort of a thing, which, is less objectionable than, the standard Abrahamic versions. And then I do sort of ask him, well, why choose Allah or Islam? And he sort of puts forward his view. So I think, but the challenge I see with Sufism is that obviously now they are stepping away from the Quran far more than many of the other sects, or are reinterpreting it completely differently to what any human would normally do so. And, in a sense, that's kind of maybe that's the reinterpretation. If Sufism was the majority of Muslims across the world, I don't think we'd be seeing what we see today. So
Well, I've actually got a mate who is an ex-Muslim that comes from a Sufi family, and she actually. I mean, people talk about particularly Sunni Muslims and like Salafis when it comes to honor culture and killing. My mate, and this is, we're talking England, 2016. So this was last year, and her family actually kidnapped her. She went off to university. Her family didn't like it. They sent a brother, and I can't remember, it was either a brother's mate or a cousin, kidnapped her. Wouldn't let her out of the house, false imprisonment. And I got a phone call. I think it was about 2:30 in the morning. My dad's just threatened to kill me. And I remember the exact quote. He said, if you continue with your lifestyle, I don't mind a prison sentence. And that's a Sufi family.
Yeah, not all Sufis are peaceful. So like there have been like violent Sufi sects.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm guessing, again, the majority of Sufis are not the sort of violent type, are they? So you'll have those sects, but...
No, if there would be some, I think Sufism is more general, more kind of appealing. But it's not like all Sufis are peaceful. I mean, even the kind of... There are elements within the Taliban movement that are kind of semi-Sufi.
I just think like the cognitive dissonance is amazing now. I mean, we were just talking about Egypt, but I mean, this only comes after a few days after a bombing of a mosque in Nigeria. And I mean, just talking Egypt specifically, you think about all the shit that's been going on with Egypt and with attacks, and even now, today, right this second, not enough has been done to win over the local population to deny the Islamic State safe haven. There have been reports of abuse where captured militants have been executed by the military, and that's one of the justifications. Concerns about the way that the government is approaching things and is, actually increasing militancy rather than decreasing it. So, like, all these things go together.
And I'm. This is the sad part. I'm in sort of conversation with somebody at the moment whose life's in danger, who wants to come out and who wants to leave and so forth. And, he's basically saying my life could be in danger. And this is the sort of thing. And again, this is where the apologists annoy me, because they will find something and go, no, that's not true Islam, or whatever the case is. Here's somebody who just wants to either leave the religion or wants to get away from it, or has left but can't come out. And
what country is he in?
I'm not going to say anything more about that sort of thing.
Is it the West or Middle East or?
No, he's not in the West. I mean, it's less likely in the West. It's more likely that something would happen elsewhere in the world. And so, but this is, I think we sit here and we have these nice conversations, etc. We don't know how tough it is for people out there, and some people will want the truth no matter what, and they're prepared to give up their lives, and we sit here in the comfort of our home. So sometimes it's a rationality check, or, just a reality check, should I say. Because yes, we are questioning it here, and we're able to do so in a country that is reasonable freedom of speech.
Don't be too certain that you're safe in the UK.
I was just going to say the same thing. I don't think it matters what country you're in. It's the ideology, the culture is everywhere.
I don't know. I think that particularly in the UK, it seems to be kind of changing. I think definitely with apostasy, it kind of reminds me of gays in the 80s. Like, I talk to so many Muslims and ex-Muslims now, and it's sort of getting to the point where instead of apostasy being, oh, so bad, it's like, okay, well, if someone else's son, daughter, brother, sister, mum, dad wants to leave, that's fine, just not mine, which is kind of an improvement.
Is it really?
It's
Raven,
a
come on, look at some of the
step.
videos that you get in Speaker's Corner, how quickly things get violent.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, there's definitely violent people, but let's just take two examples. I was watched a couple of the videos, I think earlier today. I had a bit of time to do that. You've got Ali, bless him, who's, when I say he's relatively harmless, I've got to be a bit more careful with what I say. He's relatively harmless in the sense that I don't think somebody like Ali Dawa is going to threaten anybody with physical violence.
He led a witch hunt against a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah, that's
but not physical.
Yeah, and I don't think he realized the consequence of his actions. And so I think with Ali, to a point anyway, one can excuse it with ignorance. The young man, boy, whatever you want to say, there's just ignorance there, and that could be cured with education. Now, in Ali's case, that's probably unlikely because he thinks he's got the answers. But you contrast that with somebody like Hamid or Tawhid, those two characters, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, float around in Speaker's Corner, and those two could and would. You just have to push the right buttons. They could and would do violence. I could see the two of them, going with ISIS, pretending they wouldn't in Speaker's Corner, but they could quite happily do that. Apologies. And obviously have demonstrated, violent tendencies in the sense of threatening people, both of them. So it wasn't just Hamid threatening Sarah. I've seen the videos, so I don't say that lightly unless I've actually seen the evidence of it, threatening people who do X, Y, and Z. So there's a difference between them. But Ali's got like 100 and whatever thousand subscribers, so he has got an impact in some way. Now, again, he's not threatening physical violence, but he's doing things in his ignorance that he thinks is bringing him fame or exposing people or whatever the case is. And I'm sure that can have an effect on other people as well. You just don't know who's watching. You can't affect people who's watching, but there is a difference certainly in Speaker's Corner.
I think when it comes to violence, though, I mean, the mentality of these people, for the most part, tends to be that they're taught to love their religion more than anything. And they will actually say, I love my prophet more than I love my own children.
Well, that's the basis. That's where you go. Come on. How far away is it then to ISIS?
I don't even know how you respond. I don't even know how you respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that at Speaker's Corner. It's just incomprehensible to me that you could love somebody you've never met, don't know anything about, have just read in a mythical book, and feel like that's more important than the people that brought you up and presumably loved you to some degree. I suppose if they beat and abused you, you might have a psychological reason to, look for some love outside of the family. But if you had a loving family and yet you believe in somebody, or you love somebody more than your family, etc. I mean, even the Christians with, meek and mild, supposedly Jesus, as far as I know, most sects don't go to that degree. They see him as the Messiah, but I think the family still comes first, as far as I know.
Look how many Christians kill themselves just because there's some guy who says, well, I'm the representative of Jesus, and now you need to love me. Look how many people in the US have had hundreds of people killed. They believe this. So for me, it's not that far away. If you start believing that Muhammad is more important than your family, I mean, you can be brainwashed into anything. I mean, the shit that gets drilled into your head is without limits.
Yeah. I'm just coughing.
Can you imagine if it was Spider-Man?
Yeah, somebody on the show.
Like instead of Muhammad, just like replace Muhammad with Spider-Man. How different the world would be. You go by the morals and teachings of Spider-Man. Remember when Spider-Man had the chance to kill the Green Goblin, but he showed mercy?
I think we've got to be a bit careful with those sort of analogies. To a point, the analogy is true, but a Muslim could easily come back and go, hey, Muhammad's brought this whole lifestyle that you follow, where Spider-Man just said a few things and we know he's a mythical character, etc., etc. So I get the analogy. But I think you look
at comic fans, how they respond to the slightest thing they don't like in a movie or a comic, and then tell me there's a difference.
Yeah, but we know that they're being irrational. We know the same. We believe we know the same for religious people, except that they have a text. They believe the person actually existed. Nobody, as far as I know, unless the person is completely irrational, I don't think there's any comic book fan that actually believes Spider-Man existed. So I think there's a difference there.
Well, no, but like there are people that are fans of Star Wars. They when it comes to the idea of the Force, they're completely 100% fully aware that this is something that George Lucas created. They're completely 100% fully aware it comes from a science fiction franchise. And they will say, and they're being serious, Jedi is my religion. I am a Jedi. This is my religion. And they're not joking. That is their religion.
Yeah.
Seriously? I thought this was a joke.
No,
there are people who genuinely ascribe to the quote-unquote Jedi faith.
Yeah, I think there's a difference there from what most people understand by religion and faith with Jediism, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I've heard that, and there was a push to add that as a some kind of religion. I mean, I think that's again pushing the word religion or that sort of thing a bit far. Normally, religion's to do with a supernatural deity.
When it comes to like, what do you consider to be a religion? I mean,
the worship of a supernatural deity, normally outside of this universe, that has extraordinary, if not omni-type presence, and sends a message for all of mankind.
Well, I think of, because we're just talking about Speaker's Corner, like take Chemits, for example, right? I've looked at a few videos where Chemits talk about their beliefs, and they seem to be very aware. They're like, I don't think Chemits sort of see it as a literal thing in the way that we're talking about. You know, they're very happy to say this is partly based in culture. It's the deification of nature. It's a way of understanding the world. So, I mean, it happens.
Yeah, can't you get Kalam or somebody on here to explain Kemet to us?
Yeah, I'll definitely try that. I think he was interested in coming on. So
because I'd love to speak to him particularly. Where does he get his amazing knowledge from when it comes to Islam?
Yeah, no, I'll ask him. I guess he reads up quite a bit. And in fact, at Speaker's Corner, I think Phil might go on his show because I did mention it. And so I introduced the two of them. And so Phil would be interested going on that show. And I have asked Kalam before. I need to sort of make a more formal thing where he comes on as a guest. And then we can have that conversation.
Yeah, because Titans TV is all nice, but come on, this is not the level of Kalam. This is not the level that I would like to speak to him at.
No, I'll certainly ask him to come on here, and then we can ask him questions and get his view, and he can explain more about Kemet, etc. Because yes,
talking about Chemits, I've just thought of that video that Sarah was on. You know, where he was explaining his beliefs, and he was just and like the Muslim he was talking to just did not understand what Sarah was saying, even when Sarah said flat out, I'm not saying it's factually true, I'm saying it's subjective, it's real to me, I like it, I find it beneficial, that's it, the end. I'm not saying it's like gravity, I'm not saying I can demonstrate it, it's a belief. And but even that is a particular understanding. But I mean, I'm not gonna just come out and say that it's no less true or no less meaningful to Sarah than any other belief is to any other believer.
Yeah, but the problem, Raven, is, well, potentially the problem is, here's where I agree. Sarah's not going around, or didn't go around, preaching his belief or claiming that everybody else should believe it. But my question to Sarah, or to anybody else who has a belief that is potentially difficult to justify, would be, do you care about what's true, or do you care about what makes you feel good? Because if you don't care what's true, no problem, then we can't have a conversation. If you only care about what makes you feel good, then many people can claim many things, and they genuinely would seem to make them feel good. But I care about what's true. So, while he's not walking around claiming that, if he's claiming to have a belief, he's quite he's entitled not to have to defend it if he doesn't want to. But I would ask, if he is going to bring it out, and same with Kalam or anybody else, do you care about what's true? And if you do care about what's true, have you got good reason for believing it, or do you believe it because it makes you feel good, or it has some utility value? Now, I can't deny that people have all kinds of weird and wonderful beliefs that may give them, they claim, utility, i.e. gives them some positive effect. But is it true? And I think that's the big differentiator for anybody that claims anything, because anybody can believe anything they want and claim it helps them in some way, but is it true?
But he actually says it's not factually true. It's just true to him.
Okay, but that's
yeah, but he's making a distinction between what you're saying and what he's saying, between true. Like, you're talking factually. I mean, Sarah, from the videos that I've seen, seems to make a distinction, and he's very aware of this distinction.
I mean, he's not on here to ask himself, but true for you.
Well, we can talk about the concept of it.
Basically, a belief, which is fine. But my question goes back to: do you care about whether your beliefs are true, as in like true in reality, objectively true to the best of our ability? And if you don't, that's fine. Then we can't have that conversation. If you say true for me is like, I just believe it and I've got no good reasons, then that's an irrational. Now, you can be irrational if you want to, but that's an irrational position to hold as far as I'm concerned. If you cannot defend a belief and you're claiming to have one, fine. But, but then
he
if
says himself he is just as crazy as Muslims. It's just a different kind of crazy, and this is what they can't handle, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he says it is a delusion. It's just a delusion that I particularly find beneficial.
I think he's quite open about this. But
Yeah.
the question, okay, but can anyone answer the question, do you care what is true if they believe in the supernatural? You can't.
well, they have to if they want to have a rational conversation. So
Well, you can't. This is exactly the point, because you're absolutely right. You can't.
But again, I think this is a particular understanding that they might not have. I mean, like with the Kalams, right? When they talk about, you know, I have this particular thing with Ra, and Ra is the sun, and then they'll go into like different aspects, like the face of Ra, the disc of Ra, but they don't think it's actually a conscious being. They understand that what the sun is, but they know the sun is the sun. They don't.
How do you know that?
So they're giving these attributes. You know, they're deifying nature in a way that, to me, I mean, I may be wrong, and if you can get Kalam to come on the show, I would love to question him on this because I'm curious. But it seems to be sort of like, how can I put it? Just sort of, I'm not really sure how to put it, but like it's not in the same category as what we usually talk about when it comes to belief. It's just not.
But I don't know what you're really saying there, Raven.
I'm not sure how to put it.
No, because I'm not understanding you. So maybe have a thought about it and try and get a concise version of what you're trying to say, because I'm not following you as clearly as I'd like to. I want to welcome in Anza to the discussion. Anza, good evening and welcome. So how are you?
Hi, hello everybody. I'm good, thanks. Thank you. Been listening.
Hopefully you've been watching and listening. Any thoughts on what we talked about, either the crazy comments or the ISIS or anything else that we've chatted about? Love to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I could say a couple of things, but I'll try and breeze through them. The comments, hilarious as usual. I love that part of the show. It's so funny because people get to see exactly what the mentality of the people that are actually watching these videos and, you know, taking stance against us, what their mentality and level of education is actually about. So it's really good to expose that and get a few good laughs in at the same time. As for the ISIS thing, there was one thing that I wanted to point out while I was outside, but I didn't want to jump in. It was that you guys came to a kind of understanding that the ISIS is a valid interpretation of the Quran as much as any other interpretation is. For example, Sufism. You know, obviously we all know that the words in the Quran are extremely malleable and can be used for a variety of different kind of purposes. So I would say that, in fact, that's us putting it politely. If you really check, for example, the history of Islam and its spread and conquest, if you look at the life of Muhammad, if you just look at the Quran literally, yeah, forget all the exegesis and scholars and hadiths and all that. Just look at the words and what they say literally from the best translations, and it's been translated into so many different languages. We can get linguistic experts to come to a reasonable understanding. I think then, if we were to be more serious about it, I think it's quite obvious that ISIS have the best or most accurate interpretation of the Quran, because they do actually follow things literally word for word as much as possible, and that is what the words say. So it's only that, you know, the world has moved on, morality has moved on, science has moved on, international politics has moved on. It's only those things that have kind of softened the other aspects and schools and types of Islam that have come about. And, you know, I kind of think that's irrelevant. I think ISIS actually have probably the most accurate interpretation of the Quran.
Do you think that will soften it?
What will soften it?
Islamic State. Like just the existence of the Islamic State, that you have a group that is so literal, and then, you know, so many Muslims are like, no, they're not Muslim, and they're things like that. And yet, you know, you look at you look at the literature, you look at the Quran, you look at the hadiths, and it's all there. So just in actually seeing it put into practice, because, you know, it's one thing to talk about it theoretically, it's one thing to sort of, you know, talk about it in a hypothetical scenario, but when it's in the real world, I mean, yeah, you've got to imagine. I mean, if you were still a believing Muslim, you know, so let's say a couple of years before you started having doubts, what would your take be? I mean, wouldn't you don't you think this would lead to? I don't want to say reformation, but like, you know what I'm getting at?
Not really, but because that's not really what I was saying.
Do you think that when it comes to literalism and so much of a fundamentalism, the existence of the Islamic State, their very existence, will actually have an effect on that, will actually shift the global consciousness of the Islamic community away from a literalistic approach?
I have no idea. All I know is that if you bring up people with a particular flavor of Islam or any other religion or way of thinking, they generally tend to stick with that. So if there was another resurgence of an Islamic massive, state that's, operating to encompass the whole world again, that would be a very bad thing, I would say, in pretty much complete totality, because I can't see the fact that the rest of the world who disagree will always be opposed against it, but the numbers of people who are just brought up and brainwashed thinking that that's the right way will just be more as well. So no, I don't think that would have any positive effect whatsoever. I'm just saying, my whole point had nothing to do with that. I was just saying that we go too easy on Islam, because the fact of the matter is, when taken literally, the product is ISIS, the product is Saudi Arabia, the product is all the worst aspects of humanity we can think of. It's only through, intellectual gymnastics and moral kind of, I don't know, dubious moral kind of thinking that you could ever see it in positive lights. It really is ridiculous.
A couple of years ago, you remember a couple of years ago, there was that, I think it was in Leicester, there was that conference, like Ask a Muslim, like an open day where non-Muslims are invited to ask questions, sort of like as a PC propaganda thing.
Yeah, things like that.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but
Raven, just let him answer, because you did ask him a question and then you just carried on speaking. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I heard about that, and I see a lot of that sort of thing. People posting videos of themselves blindfolded, saying "hug a Muslim" or these sort of things. It's ridiculous, because all they're doing is either lying about their religion or displaying their ignorance about the facts of their religion, or basically being insensitive to the reality of the pain caused by their religion. And it really winds me up that these people act as if them being a huggy, cuddly kind of person makes Islam good somehow. It's got nothing to do with it. They can only claim Islam is in any way reasonable by misinterpreting and lying about it or not knowing about it. That's it. And we're here totally to expose that, I think.
Yeah, when one of the organizers of that Ask a Muslim thing was actually interviewed on the radio, I think it was on LBC, and it was talking about the wonderfulness of Sharia, and the host is like, well, what about the persecution of gays? What about women being a second class citizen? And his response was just like, why do you always have to bring up those parts? Well, because you're saying we should implement this system.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah, but see, look, this is the thing we all have to be very careful of, is people misrepresent things for positive reasons and negative reasons. So, these guys putting a positive spin on things is the same as anybody straw manning or mischaracterizing anybody's beliefs or ways of thinking. That's exactly what we need to avoid now.
I lost you there, so you've muted yourself. I want to present this to everybody again so that we don't claim that all Muslims do everything. But here is a Pew poll, the moderate side of Islam. And here we go. Here's a great example of it based on the Pew research from 2013. And here you see it. Death for leaving Islam was the question asked. About 584 million Muslims polled. And this wasn't all Muslim countries, by the way, but the majority of are in favor of them. Death for adultery, 780 million. Sharia should rule, 1.1 billion. Wife should obey the husband, 1.3 billion, of the total of 1.62 billion. Now, again, we're not claiming that everybody's going to invoke the death, but here are the numbers for people that are in support of these ideas. Will they physically carry it out themselves? No, but here are the Pew stats. And again, they were not able to get stats in Saudi Arabia and a couple of other countries. So we're even short of stats in the most hardline countries, where that number would probably be a lot higher. So again, we're not claiming all Muslims, but this is a significant number of Muslims in the hundreds of millions who believe things that are literally incompatible with the West. And these numbers, no matter how our apologist interlocutors and speakers corner want to dance around it, is not insignificant. So I just want to bring that to people.
Even if it would be a quarter of that, it would still be, take something like death for leaving Islam. If it would be 1/10 of that, it would be a huge problem.
And you also got to wonder how many Muslims would actually oppose it, like even if they didn't agree.
Yeah.
Answer, sorry, you muted yourself there by accident. Do you want to carry on there?
Oh yeah, sorry, my phone rang. I had to answer it.
Oh, you're losing you a little bit there. Your connection. Just try again.
What was it saying?
To God.
Saying didn't it any better? Nah, I'm gonna log out and log in.
Okay, cool. You'll be back in a moment. Speakers calling.
So, has anyone heard that Iraq is trying to push in a law so that you can have sex with 9-year-olds?
In Iraq or in UK?
Iraq.
Don't know.
Apparently, it's actually marriage in Iraq is currently at the age of 18, but there's a proposal in Parliament to put it down to 9, at least for girls.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. Turkey has done, I don't remember what.
Well, they've brought actual politicians that are opposing this, so, you know, to be fair, pointing it out.
Let's sort of keep it on the. We can always talk about those things. We have done ad nauseum, I guess. Is there anything else we want to say on? I mean, I think Abu's take, and it seems to be the majority of the view on the panel here, is that ISIS is a plausible interpretation. It's not something that people are dreaming up and they are just seemingly completely misinterpreting. Now, obviously, the apologists will claim they are misinterpreting and bringing verses that will support the non-ISIS view. But it's not like ISIS are claiming something that's completely unheard of. Let's put it that way, at least if we were extremely charitable. Is there anything else we want to say on that, or do we think that we've sort of covered that the summary of the position is that it's a plausible interpretation if you view the Quran in a certain way? It's an interpretation that, you know.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
I think also I think we're not being overly strict. I don't think we're being overly anything here. I think we're being very fair in saying that it is possible. It is one version. It is not the version. I think we're very clear that most Muslims are better than their God, but there is a way that you can interpret this that does make ISIS look like they are the a valid interpretation of Islam, the way that they are acting and the way that they are implementing it. And that is it. So, I mean, every Muslim is free to do the exact opposite. And the worse Muslim a Muslim is, the better for me, I think.
Perhaps what we can do is just have a short, well, I say short, but a short discussion and get your views on why the West, and obviously not all of us, but let's be more accurate, why some of the liberals in the West are so keen to dismiss ISIS or those views and look for any excuse other than you could find some of the views in the Quran. Why is it that some people are so readily wanting?
Well, for years now, I've actually been referring to organizations like the Guardian newspaper and the BBC as the guardians of Islam.
Why do you think that is?
Because they've made it their mission for some reason to defend Islam at any cost.
Well, it's not by some reason. It's they're poop scared. Come on, most people there are somehow infiltrated, infatuated, or whatever, or in some way at least influenced by Christianity. And as soon as you start questioning Islam, well, it's not far from there to question Christianity, because you can use the same aspects. So people are shit scared that Christianity is going to be obliterated the moment you ask in uncomfortable questions of Islam.
You genuinely think that's a reason that the quote-unquote regressive left defends Islam?
Yes.
I've got a reason.
I completely 100% disagree.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
I mean, there are other reasons as well, because I think a lot of people are just simply saying, well, we need to be good, we need to be tolerant, we need to be... So those are also things, but I think the basis for all that lies in the fact that this Christianity thing, or this religion thing, is still influencing all those people.
I think it comes down to race, to be honest. I think that we can talk about and criticize Christianity because Christianity is seen as, ours. Whereas Islam. So it's a minority. It's different. Most of the followers are non-white. I really think it's a race thing. You know, they don't want to be racist. They don't want to be. And you know, there are good historical reasons for that. Let's be fair. You know, if you look at the way that Jews have been treated, the Asians have been treated, the way blacks have been treated in the Western world, including the UK, even through the 20th century. You know, there is very good reasons for looking at this and thinking, okay, we do not want to vilify a minority. There are very good reasons for doing that. But I think that there is this absolute confusion against what is racism and what actually is valid criticism. You know, and have you ever noticed that they don't do this with any other faith? They don't do it with Jainists, they don't do it with Buddhists, they don't do it with Sikhs, we don't do it with Hindus. It's just Islam, because Islam is seen to be, you know, Islamophobia is rising and there's all racist attacks. And I mean, I do think the intentions are good, and I completely disagree with you when it comes to because Christianity could fall, because these people don't give a shit about Christianity. They do not give a shit. What they give a shit about is whether or not, you know, they're persecuting a vulnerable minority. It comes down to race.
Okay, I just don't see it as a minority.
I think it's several things. You could also point to things like left-wing, like what countries Soviet Union aligned itself with. I think it's many small things that.
Answer, you also had something.
Can I just give an example?
Hang on a second. Hang on, Raven, a second. Answer also wanted to give a few thoughts there. Go ahead on that point, Answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I do understand what Stops is saying, because ultimately fear does come down to it. And Raven even supported that by saying that, I mean, is kind of odd, that it's just, you know, being extra liberal, especially with minorities. But let's face it, Islamic people are not the smallest minority, and they get way more kind of leeway than any.
You sound like Rob last week.
Yeah, we're losing you there.
Group and Rise of the Block. All right, I'll jump out again.
Come back in again. Yeah. Just get a cleaner signal there. I guess you're on your mobile, and
sounds like he's had a night on the piss.
Your connection is not that good. Go ahead, Abu. You were saying something, and then back to Raven.
What is it? It's hard to know, but there is I think it's probably several things playing in. They may not perhaps they're not even aware of it themselves. It may just be a kind of knee-jerk reaction, like Western governments invaded Afghanistan. In Afghanistan there is Muslims, therefore Muslims good, West bad.
How much do you think the effect kicks in of, well, we killed the Jews, we can't do the same with Muslims?
But
this guilt,
the funny thing is that the regressive left are now being kind of indirectly anti-Semitic. So,
I was watching a documentary on female genital mutilation, and so many people refused to sign it because the woman who was doing this social experiment said, it's mutilation, it's mutilation, but it's my culture. And it's like, oh, it's your culture. Well, I don't want to be racist. And Jesus Christ, there was this white middle-class uni girl. I shit you not. I am quoting. I can't condemn female genital mutilation because of my colonial past. I shit you not.
Well, that's my point, yeah.
I mean,
well, if that's your point, what's that got to do with
Christianity? It's actually extremely tragical, but the logic is horrendous.
I want to welcome in Terry, who's just joined us. Terry, welcome to the show. Perhaps tell us your worldview and a little bit of yourself and what your thoughts are on the show so far.
All right, guys. Can you just bear with me one moment? I'm just making a drink and I'll be right back, and then I'll interject. So you just give me one moment,
just
please,
mute
guys.
yourself while you do that. Go ahead.
Okay, cheers. Sorry, one moment, lads.
Yeah. Got to do it on a Friday.
So stops. I'm kind of curious because, like, you say you don't think it comes down to a race thing, but like every single time you see these people talking, it always comes down to this idea of persecution and violence. You know, a terrorist attack has happened, and this is the result of Muslims feeling scared, and people that dress as Islamic clothes are persecuted, and women are having the hijabs pulled off. And I've never ever got any impression whatsoever this comes back to Christianity in any way whatsoever. In fact, most of the people who are on the regressive left don't actually seem to be religious.
No,
Okay,
they are religious. They have their own religion that is like some kind of more or less conscious Marxism. They are like a religion. They behave like a cult and like.
No, but what I'm saying is, in Islam, if somebody says, well, Islam is not good for us because it says women are second class. Well, if you go into the Bible, you see the same thing.
How many people in Western Europe give a shit about the Bible?
A huge there's so many. There's a lot of stuff in there, but this is what I'm saying. People were brought up with this. There are very, very few people who were born and bred and have never been influenced or have never been exposed to Christianity outside of Islamic countries.
I think most people are just ignorant on what the Quran actually says or the Hadiths or whatever. So, and I think some people just want Islam to be the religion of peace because people have said that. If I zoom back 10 years, I would have thought the religion of peace, it was a religion of peace. I remember living in South Africa at one time, thinking that it was good, just shows where my thinking was, thinking that it was good that Salman Rushdie had a death threat against him because he was insulting other people's religion. So, that was me, more than 10 years. That would have been 20 years ago, whenever it was, Yeah.
It wasn't even doing that, though. He basically just wrote a fantasy story. It had like magic and shit. It was like his attempt at Harry Potter.
It offended people, and they, obviously the fatwa came down from the Ayatollah. And I remember thinking 25 years ago, whenever that happened, because I was still in South Africa, just come out of school, I guess. Yeah, he shouldn't be doing that. Good on him. That'll teach other people to do that. That was my thinking. So I'm quite clear that I was as ignorant and delusional as other people are today, and they want to believe that. I mean, remember when he did write that, he was condemned by other religious, not just Muslims, by the way, other people for offending Muslims. And as Christopher Hitchens and many other people have pointed out, this is the level we're at in the West, and even today, they condemn. Remember that pastor wanted to burn the Quran, obviously just to get himself on the news and that sort of stuff. That crazy guy in Texas, Terry Jones. They all condemned him instead of protecting his freedom of speech. If he had said, "I'm going to burn a Bible," you wouldn't have heard a peep, or the Scientology book, or
my point exactly.
So. But what they do claim is a minority status, and what they have realized, they're playing the West at its own game, which is the West is tolerant, and we are tolerant of minorities. And they figured out that some people have, again, this is not all Muslims here, but some have and manipulated. They figured out that the West is tolerant, and if you're a minority, all you have to claim is victim status, and then suddenly people start tiptoeing around you. And so they've started to use this. So they've used the West's freedoms against itself. And at some point,
the reason that the Muslim Brotherhood originally popularized the term Islamophobia is for exactly the reason that you're saying.
Yeah, but at some point we've got to ask the question: when do we stop tolerating the intolerable? Because at the moment, to some degree or other, and certain individuals at least, and certain views are intolerable. And so, and they're trying to dance around it. Some people try and dance around it, but how many shows have we done here with things that are absolutely intolerable to us?
I think but this is the point. This is what I'm trying to say, that a lot of people seem to think that religion somehow requires special privileges, and I think it doesn't.
Yeah, to be honest, Rob, I think me and you have talked about this quite at length before at the corner last year. Philosophy has been through this. Western philosophy has dealt with this like hundreds of years ago even. This is not a problem anymore. Like what Stop said, is that they only have a problem when you try to give religion some sort of special status. If you treat human behavior on the basis of the laws and morals that we've established in a Western secular society, it's irrelevant. Believe whatever the hell you want, as long as you don't harm any non-consenting or living creatures. Basically, worship whatever you want, practice whatever way you want, as long as you don't harm anyone or any living thing, or cause damage to anybody's property or anything. These standards, which we've established in Western philosophy and in social discourse and politics, religion is irrelevant to them. If we treat all religions equally based on those kind of foundations, it's not a problem. It's only when they start demanding special status.
Well, the problem really comes in for those religionists, because they believe that they've got the word of God who supersedes anything else. And so that's where you have the problem. Now, if they just believe something that a Messiah had said, that he just woke up one day and it sounded good and whatever, but, that's not the case. All of the religions, and Islam in particular, he's just interpreting what Allah said, and Allah is the final and objective truth, and that bypasses everything else. And that's where you have the conflict. So I don't see that we will get to a point where everybody will live happily.
But the thing is, Rob, they're allowed to believe that. There's no such thing as an intellectual crime. They're allowed to believe that Allah is the truth, or the Quran is the truth, as much as they like. What they're not allowed to do is behave in ways which cause damage and harm to people in society.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah. So ultimately, nobody cares what they truly believe, or whether they believe that Allah is truly the answer. Nobody cares. That's their own business. All we care about is they obey the laws, the rules, the mores of our social world.
Well, that basically ties into what I said around the start of the show. You are persecuting us by not allowing us to persecute.
Yeah, but they've got, but that's part of the problem. They've got.
I actually do think that one of the contentions, particularly when it comes to this idea of tolerance, is that religious people don't understand that non-religious people can have things that are sacred. Like when it comes to the right to offend, like when it comes to free speech, for instance, I would say that I value free speech as something sacred and something to be fought for, as much as any believer values the sacrosanctness of their own teachings. And I can give reasons for this, but when it comes to tolerance, rights, things like that, I see freedom of speech as the basis for all of it. If you could not actually have the right to question without being killed, every single thing we have that is worthwhile, that has made the world better, that is worth preserving, every single thing stems from freedom of speech. If there was no freedom of speech, you could not have had these ideas, you could not have had these changes. And so when I see like if we talk about Muslims, for example, saying, well, you're criticizing something that you think is bad, but this is sacred to me, and you shouldn't be allowed to say it. No. That's what you don't understand. You think because I'm an atheist, I don't have a sense of the sacred. As far as I'm concerned, to me, there is nothing more sacred than freedom of speech. I'll say that as an atheist. To me, freedom of speech, the right to criticize, the right to offend, it is sacrosanct.
Yeah, we've covered this many times. Absolutely agree. I want to bring in Terry. People are asking when Terry's going to speak. Terry, have you got your drink? Are you settled in there? Do you want to share with us a bit about yourself and share a few thoughts?
Hello, Rob. Yeah, I'm back now. What's the topic? What do you want to know?
Just what are you drinking? You said gin and tonic.
Coors Light.
Ew.
So it's not bad, actually. It's not bad. First time I tried it.
First time I tried it, I flew over to America. I took one sip and spat it out. Jesus, it tasted like diluted piss.
It's not.
So Terry, what's your view? Are you a non-believer, atheist, agnostic, Christian, Muslim, or something else? Just so we know what your view is.
Yeah, sure. Well, my view is along the lines of atheism, really. Okay. I mean, I'm not religious. I don't follow the Abrahamic religions or faiths.
Okay, well, that's a start. That's good. I mean, based on the show tonight, have you got any thoughts on either on some of the comments we've had, some of the mindset that you see or hear, or anything around ISIS?
Yeah, I mean, I'm against any kind of radicalism, really. I mean, and I support free speech, obviously. I mean, like Muslims get a lot of the rap. I mean, because there's a lot of extremism, obviously. But if you look at other religions as well, you know, like Zionism and stuff, there's extremism there. So, you know, when it comes down to like these radical people, they're quite crazy, aren't they? So, I don't blame one without the other, kind of thing, you know.
So I suppose the difference, Terry, is that there seems to be a direct link between what people believe and their actions. And with religious people, they have certain tenets in the book that they believe came from a supernatural deity that can't be changed, questioned, or altered. And so that sets them a bit apart from, say, communism or something else, which is a man-made thing, and which, you know, even if it says you can't question it, we do it anyway. And those things are likely not to last, you know, other than to be enforced in some way. But we always know, and most humans know, that that it's a human construct. Now, where religion tries to have a special place for itself is by saying, hey, no, we're just interpreting or sending you the message from on high, from the big guy standing upstairs there. We are not telling you what to do off our own backs. We're giving you the big guy's instructions, and that's how they sort of get around that. And that's why it's lasted presumably so long as well. Because people don't want to think for themselves. They'd rather have the big guy telling them what to do, and that's a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Just a comment here. I've still got to love it. I've posted it in our private chat there. Some fellow, let's just call him. So we're totally destroyed Rob. How could Rob still have the nerve to talk after that? Here we go again. So
don't feed the trolls.
No, well, you know, it's a case of
I don't even look. This is a trigger, okay? So I don't think this guy's genuine anyway.
Who knows? I don't know. But those sort of people obviously don't care about truth. And that's the other big thing, you know. That's what I notice a big deal, which is different for all of us in the panel, I would suggest, is that we will change our minds. We're not rooted in a particular thing. Yes, we're kind of comfortable with our worldview, but if something changed tomorrow, whether we liked it or not, if we were intellectually honest, we'd have to change our mind. And so we will change with whatever the best evidence or reasons may be, whereas our religious interlocutors are defending a position against reason, without reason. I need to find Aaron Ra's quote because he says it extremely well. He's obviously thought about that quote quite well. But they are the opposite or antithesis of our methodology. I have something I already believe. Let me go out in the world and see how I can confirm it. I'm not going to go out there to see if I can falsify it. And those that do, surprise, surprise, they become ex-Muslims. How's that? And every single one of them, to a man or a woman that we've had on the show here, says something along the lines of, hey, I woke up, I engaged my critical thinking, I got out of the matrix, whatever. They're using those sort of words is what I hear all the time. But those
or you could just say, my dick.
Try that again.
Alternatively, you know, Shabor totally destroyed Rob. How can Rob still have the nerve to talk after that? Because I have a huge dick. It's fucking huge. It's biblical in scale.
All right, keep it family orientated here. What are you on at the moment?
Family oriented. That's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of funny, like they behave like it's like what's it called elementary school bullying boys. That they're like you're kind of tired in one video and you don't quite hear what they say or something like that. It's like you're not paying attention, and then you're making one kind of silly mistake that you can correct it very easily. And then like, Shabor, he completely destroyed Rob. And then like forever, like, oh, come on, dude.
Oh, it's amusing. I don't know if they actually believe this sort of stuff. I think it's for them. It's as Dave so eloquently said in the comments earlier on. This is like a football game. They don't care about truth. When you ask them the question, which I think on occasions need to be done, do you care about what's true? Now they have to say yes. If they say no, game over for them. You know, then they can go on with their fairy tales, whatever they want. So they have to say yes. But you know, I don't believe that they think they've got truth already. but the question is just there to hold their feet to the fire when they start going off, into fantasy land or talking nonsense or whatever the case may be. As I asked that old gentleman on the video, you can see there. Yes, a boy destroyed you. I watched the video 3 times, and then I asked him about 5 times, does he care about truth? And to go watch my response video. What do? It's like the brain suddenly just gets overloaded, and the response is like gobbledygook. Because, hey, I don't want to go and find out and learn something that may disagree with what I already believe and how wonderful this dude is. There might actually be some truths out there that contradict it. And in fact, other Muslims have even said it. Begrudgingly, when pushed and shoved and prodded, they've had to agree, unless they want to be completely unreasonable, that he acted like a child and, he was wrong on certain things. So, but hey, we move on from. But it's just something that won't die. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving, in a sense. So there we go.
But like, is your approach, like, with every single person that criticizes or trolls, to say, okay, do you care about what's true? Like, I mean, there are some people that you're not going to penetrate. They're not there for that. It's never going to happen. So I just either walk away or just troll them back. Just give a witty comment.
No, I ignore massive amounts. I used to respond to many comments. Now I don't. It'll just be as the fancy catches me on occasions if I've got a few moments. But no, most of the people I completely leave now. It's just such a waste of time. Rob, please tell me why you were scared to answer Sabur at the time and place. All right, Hamid, just for you again.
Because he's got a huge dick. He didn't need to say anything. He just stood there quietly while little Dick Shabor just ranted on. Because Rob's dick is huge.
You carry on there, Raymond.
That is basically the only response that is even worthy. If you're going to give a response at all, I think that is the only response I even think people like this are worthy of. They've already made up their mind. He probably knows that you made a reply video. Fuck it. Have a laugh.
Now, let me bring Terry in again, because we sort of went off a little bit there, Terry, and you were saying a few things. So let me bring you back in.
Hello.
Yes. Hi there. Yes, that's the only thing I'd say is Hamid, join the panel, and then we can have that conversation. But sorry, Terry, carry on.
Oh no, I was just listening in, really. I was just browsing some articles. I noticed in the news earlier there was that explosion in northern Egypt. That was quite interesting. It's just the same old theme, really, isn't it? When it comes to religion.
Does anyone think it's a coincidence that there was apparently was it Oxford Circus or somewhere got evacuated on the same day?
Yeah, was it? Yeah, I think I remember that.
Let's not go conspiracy theories now.
Oh yeah, of course. I think I read an article on it.
Yeah, Terry, you probably watched early on. I brought up the thing about the Egyptian thing, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you guys, really. I'm just gaining some insight.
Cool.
Ask some questions if you want, Terry.
Very smart.
What's Speaker's Corner like anyway? I mean, like, generally, what's the atmosphere like? Because all I see is people just going backwards and forwards. I mean, I'd like to come down there eventually, but
it's worth coming down, Terry. I'd say to you, here's what would be best the first few times. Come down there and don't say anything. Just go and listen all over the show. If you can contain yourself, you might just hear so much nonsense that you can't help yourself but get involved. But come down and listen. The big thing I would suggest one does when you're coming is listen a little bit so you get used to the conversation, etc., and then sort of pick a topic that you might want to ask about or whatever. So there's 2 ways to do it. Either you come down, you've got knowledge on a particular topic, so maybe you're somebody who's an expert in evolution, cosmology, or the Quran, or whatever the case may be, in which case you can really have a backwards and forwards. Otherwise, just ask questions like you're an interested person, because they love to speak. They want to speak, and they will take up all the time they possibly can to speak. Just let them speak, because they will tell you their views ad nauseum. And they will just, advertise it. So it's very easy for you. And then you can go away and make notes. That's what I started to do. Every time I heard a claim, I went away and made a note, and I've now got tons of notes. And fortunately, I've got some other experts on the panel here, way more knowledgeable than me. So I ask them. Surround yourself with people that have got more knowledge than you. That's always useful. And find out what's true. So if somebody claims, slavery didn't happen, or Muhammad came there to, get rid of slavery, for example. Now you go away and you find out, you ask Stops or myself or Abu or anybody else, and you'll find, that's, if we were extremely charitable, that's not entirely true. So go and listen in the beginning, but come back with a particular topic. That's always kind of useful. And
you are not going to convince them. You are not going to change their minds. The thing to remember is that you're not speaking to them. Like if you do get into a debate, it's for the benefit of the people watching. You're hoping that someone in the audience is going to have something click.
Yeah.
That's definitely my approach. You're not going to convince people, but what hopefully you will do is, as people are listening, they would go away and think something will click, or it'll be a viewer on YouTube or whatever. But in the beginning, just go and have a listen. Pop down to Speaker's Corner whenever you got a chance. Go and listen in. And the other thing that might be useful is to pay attention to what I would say are the psychological tactics that are being used. Notice when somebody asks a question, and does the respondent, whoever they are, answer the question concisely and honestly, or do they dance around, or do they just not answer the question? Now, this happens for most people that I can see there. Certainly the Christians and the Muslims. When they are having a conversation, you watch it from the outside, they both do the same thing. Godwin and his crew. When he's asked a question, he dances around, he doesn't answer the question, or even some of the Christians. And of course, Muslims are experts at doing it, and they've got various ways. So look at it. So when somebody asks you, do you believe this, or what do you believe about X? Can they give you a concise answer, or is there a long story around it? Or do they go off on a tangent? Or do they say to you, well, X, Y, and Z, now you prove that's not true. So there's a lot to, I don't know if you've got expertise in philosophy or any of the other topics that might be of interest in Speaker's Corner. If you have, that will be very useful.
Yeah, sounds good. Where are you from originally then? Obviously South Africa, but which part?
Cape Town. I'm a Cape Town man.
Wow. Nice.
Capital of Zimbabwe.
Say again?
Capital of Zimbabwe.
Yeah, originally.
Nice.
But, Cape Town's where I spent one time. Stops, where were you from again? Joburg, I think, eh?
Nah, Pretoria, Jacaranda City.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, one of my friends is born in Joburg. He's he moved away there a couple of years ago. His dad still lives there.
It's a bit violent in South Africa. So you don't go out at night time in Johannesburg. They've all got compounds now. Cape Town's not as bad, but still, it's not like the UK. When I came to the UK, I thought it was like Alice in Wonderland here compared to South Africa.
But that's why I moved to Umhlanga.
Were you in Zimbabwe, Rob?
No, I was born there, but I lived most of my life in South Africa, so I'm essentially South African, basically. But I wasn't born there, no.
But was this before Mugabe times?
Left just as Mugabe took over. So as he was taking over, the parents got out, which was a good thing. Lots of things happened there that were not good.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff, to say the least.
I like the idea of going to like one of the poorest countries on earth with a fiver, transferring that £5 into local currency, building a castle, and just having a harem, and just spending the rest of my time, like the rest of my days, alternate, like just sort of like going back and forth between a drunken orgy and a golden throne.
Somebody's asking me there, what do you think of Mugabe leaving? I think it's a good thing for Zimbabwe, obviously, hopefully. I don't know about ZANU-PF, which is the party that rules the country. When you've got a sort of dictatorial party, I'm not sure how much will change. It may or may not get better. Let's hope it does, because he was a dictator. He was literally like a black Hitler. I mean, he even had the moustache. He acted that way. And the only fact that he stayed that long is because Zimbabwe didn't have anything valuable that other countries wanted. Otherwise, he would have been overthrown by US or somebody else. The fact that it had nothing of value. If there were oil there, suddenly developed oil, they would have found a reason to remove him. So just lucky for him that none of that sort of thing happened. That's the only reason he sort of survived there for as long as he did.
Off topic, correct.
That is true. Yeah, it is off topic. Somebody's asking there, who cares about your South Africa? Keep Islam in the topic. That's who we know who that is. So that's all enough. Anyway. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Rob, put me on.
Well, I'm looking forward to going down to Speaker's Corner soon anyway. So if I see you guys around, I'll definitely catch up with you or Answer.
Answer will be down more often than I will now. Unfortunately, I'm a long way away. So if Answer still goes regularly, I don't know. But TDS Dave, he's another commenter, smart guy, really nice guy. He's down there as well. Yeah, so cool. Yeah. Say hi to Dave. Andy's another elderly gentleman that reads on philosophy, etc. He's much more laid back. There's a few other atheists. And if you saw the video recently, and probably one of the atheists that I think is certainly entertaining is Steve. So Steve is he's a biologist. He's probably...
he's such a isn't he?
He's brilliant. I think he's one of the the best hecklers in Speaker's Corner. He can heckle with the best of them, and he can defend his position.
Is it only me, or did Rob disappear?
Yeah, I think his signal's dropped.
Okay, I don't know.
Go watch. Adnan calling Steve a racist. Yeah. Steve is laid back there, but he can defend his position, and he knows a fair amount. There's a couple of videos with him engaging with Sabur on evolution. That didn't go well for Sabur. Steve knows a bit about evolution, so that's also useful.
Rob,
he's a good guy. So yeah, Terry, go look for him.
I think this is an omen. That maybe we should go to the hadith of the day.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it's getting late. I've got lots to do tomorrow as well. Abu, have you got a hadith of the day for us?
Yes, this is a version of the hadith we were talking about before. Narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger ﷺ sent us on a military expedition, telling us, if you find such and such person, he named 2 men from Quraysh, burn them fire. Then we came to bid him farewell. When we wanted to set out, he said, previously I ordered you to burn so and so with fire. But as punishment with fire is done by none except Allah. If you capture them, kill them instead. Sahih Bukhari. So this was a somewhat different version from the hadith we were talking about.
Come on, who says Muhammad is not considerate?
Yazidis?
But again, is that an authentic hadith, Abu? Because that's the other backdoor escape now. Some hadiths are not authentic, apparently.
That exists in many versions.
Yeah,
and this is Sahih Bukhari.
Yeah, so now some Muslims are claiming not all of Sahih Bukhari is authentic.
Okay, but then you can go back. It exists in many different versions in more than one place in Sahih Bukhari, and I mean, if they deny that one, then they deny pretty much everything.
Only the ones that I like are authentic. All the other ones are dreamt up.
Yeah, and that's another thing, Terry, just for your information. Cherry picking is a favorite, is one of the most well-used fallacious tools that you will come across in Speaker's Corner. Cherry pick the bit that you like and disregard the rest, or whatever the case is. You'll see that everywhere you look. I mean, just look for it. It's like cherries falling off a tree, I tell you. Anyway, gentlemen,
those are tactics.
I think it's been a good show. Thank you so much to everybody here. We've got a full panel. Next time, any topics for next time? Is there a suggestion for next week?
Not sure.
I have a suggestion.
Go for it.
I'm not sure if it'd be really relevant because it's.
Don't make an intro. Just give us the topic. Come on, Raven.
Well, it's mostly to do with the Shia practice of fying.
Of what?
Fying. And not only the Shia practice of that, but also the verse in the Quran which explicitly allows for rape of prepubescent girls, including babies.
This is not in the Quran. This is in the Green Book.
No, it's in the Quran. I can look up the exact surah and verse if you want, but it talks about how you can have sex with those both who have menstruated and those who have not yet menstruated.
No.
Because, a lot of Muslims go on about how you have to be adult, you have to be, but it's right there in the Quran. You're talking about
this is the waiting period. This has nothing to do with lying.
I don't know. I mean, I actually was talking about it a while. I think I have some course somewhere, but no, but isn't this also this practicing about fying? I can't remember.
No, this is only in Ayatollah Khomeini's little green book. And there's a fatwa about this as well. how Muhammad used to master his dick so that he was different than other men, and therefore he was allowed to do it because he knew how not to hurt the little babies, and that's why he was allowed to do it. This fatwa has been erased, but if you go into the way back history site, then you can still dig it up.
Wasn't there
okay.
Wasn't there an actual like a grand ayatollah? Oh, I think back in like 30 years ago, who was advocating for this, the whole fine practice.
Ayatollah Khomeini had this in his little green book.
So would that not be a topic you'd be interested in?
Nah. I mean, of course it's interesting, but it's a fringe thing that we can discuss for 10 minutes and that's it.
Fair enough.
Because people are still using it today to justify it, but it's not really like a condoned practice.
All right. Well, I'll have a look and see if anything comes up in any of the videos I watch. If you got a suggestion for next week, then let me know. I don't know if Abu's around. We could do part 2 of the geopolitics. If not, we'll have a look and see what we can come up with.
Well, there is one thing which I saw with what's the guy's name? Hijab. Because he gave a short speech on justice in Islam. I don't know, is that a topic or not?
Yep, that's a good one. Yep.
Well, this again though could just be one of those things you talk about for 10 minutes. You know, because like what is people talk about justice and how great the Islamic State is. Okay, why? Oh, well, because when the Jews or this people were in this original place, they were treated really badly, but they were treated better over here.
So let's collect 5 topics, 10 minutes each. Brilliant.
Well, that's kind of like me saying that, you know, like Black Americans during the Jim Crow era were treated better than they were in the 1700s. It's true, but that doesn't mean you'd necessarily want it today.
Okay, but I think that you can do a whole show around it. Very easily do a whole show around Islamic justice versus secular justice, for example. What are the roots? Do we agree that there is anything that is morally superior in the Islamic judicial system, if we can use that term? Again, people would dispute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you know, how do we come by it? And how does? Yeah, there's a lot of questions actually coming up for me now, which I won't say on the show. So yes, let's do that for next week then.
Well, a good title for next week's show could be Islamic practices we should institute today. Or like, should we, or something?
Yep,
that's a good one. That's also nice. I'm currently working on a video which is based on a collaboration with Bill Warner, and I'm taking one of his speeches and adding a little bit and just juicing it up a little bit.
Okay, well, let's chat in the week as well, Stops. I don't know if that would be included in next week's show. If so, that would be quite useful. If it's going to be ready, then I'll obviously watch that. If not, we can postpone that.
Well, I'm hoping to finish it over the weekend because it's going to be called something like What I Admire About Islam.
Okay, cool. Well, send us the link. I think I'm subscribed anyway, but if you're not, subscribe to Stops' channel. Stops, put your link in again. You've got so many different channels.
It's going to be on the Stops chat because at the moment I'm running 3 simultaneously. All right, I'm doing the Quran Reality channel. I'm doing the Speaker's Corner analysis and my this channel.
Cool. All right, sounds good. So something along the lines of Islamic jurisprudence or justice, or yeah, it'll probably merge into a bit of morality, because you can't get away from justice without saying, okay, what underpins the justice? So then you get into the morality side of it. That would be useful. So if you're a Muslim, or if you want to join us next week and put forward your quote objective morality, we will happily have that conversation with you. But
objective morality, I like that one.
Well, they all say this, but of course, when you delve into it, that becomes a bit of a challenge to maintain. But happy for them to come on and discuss it. So on that note, I want to thank all our panelists. Thank you guys so much. Whoops, and so there you go, you are unhidden. Thank you to all the panelists. As always, thank you to all the viewers. And if you are a commenter, thank you as well. We will be back next week at 8 p.m. UK time. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good night to you.
All the best. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.